Hello, we've gone live because Sax just told us to. He's keeping us on topic. He's cracking his whip. He's putting us all in order. Good evening. It is Midweek Geek, and I am joined tonight by Saxius,
Hello, hello.
by Elfbait,
Hey, folks.
by IQ, and just sidling in a minute or two before we went live, Halakar.
Hello.
And hello, chat. How are you doing? Brian's in chat and Andy's in chat. And yes, Andy, yes, we will mention last night, I think, before we get going. So we do have a topic for tonight, and that is making your own spells and magic items. But before we come to anything like that, we do need to talk about what we've all been up to, don't we, chaps?
Yes.
Yes. Saxius, why don't you start? I know you're preparing avidly for tonight's stream.
Well, it's yes. Like me realizing that you would probably have nothing prepared, and throwing out like at least two ideas that knew I was somewhat aware of, or at least to give me the excuse of like knowing like okay, I might have some preparation. So I'm glad that you at least gave me like an hour and a half to like actually open up my books and scan through them. I have not had that many games as of late. The most recent one was running a one-shot of Heroic from Bear the Gen X DM. So I ran his game with my real-life group, and they very much enjoyed it. And yeah, I'd recommend everyone to, when you can, get a copy of Heroic the RPG when it goes live on Drive-Thru. The backer kit has already been finished, and I'm just waiting for the details to be handed over to me from Bear, so I can help him with the logistics of getting everything up and running.
Excellent. Did the game go well?
It went very well. I think that it's just maybe my style of DMing or my familiarity with comic books. When I explained to Bear how I ran the game, he said I had a very Iron Age style of storytelling, which my limited knowledge of comics doesn't really tell much to me, but the players loved it.
Consistent with the comic books from the 90s.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, because those are the ones I read the most of. So the players loved it. They were actually considering like maybe doing a mini campaign where they would take on a Suicide Squad or a project. I can't remember what Amanda Waller calls it, but like Team X kind of or Team Expendable kind of a setup where they will be superheroes either contracted or enforced by the government to go out and take on some of the more serious and dangerous situations. And then it's just going to be a case of them going out and dealing with that. Mind you, I was very pleased with the system. I managed to bring two out of 4 players who were downed and almost killed in that game. Given the fact you are playing as superheroes, you can take some punches. I'm very glad that I was able to dish it out as badly as the players gave it. And I even ran with fewer mooks, which was hilarious. I can see some terrible things I can do to my players with this.
Oh, I can see that certainly tickled your imagination then.
Yeah.
You've got that grin on your face at the moment. The one,
Yes.
Things that he can do to be an evil GM. Yes.
Eli, you were saying you haven't had much in the way of gaming recently. Games called
with Cody's game on hold, and then my 5e game getting canceled all the time. The only gaming I've done in the last couple of weeks is By the Sword. I have been working on gaming stuff. I'm always doing that. So, writing adventures, writing up monsters, writing entire rule sets for miniature games. But,
yes, such is the life of an active brain.
Yes.
Iman, have you played any games apart from last night's game?
I played OSC on Saturday.
Oh, you did you? Oh, yes, you did, didn't you? Yes, you did.
Yes, as did Andy, as did Dan,
did.
as did who else? Slan.
Straw Piglet joined us for the first
Straw
time as well.
Piglet for the first time. Yes, that's who it was.
Yes. So it's nice to see some new people joining us in the OSE games. We had You're Wrong join us a few weeks ago. I couldn't play in that game, and Straw Piglet joined us this week. So always good to have new people enjoying themselves. But did you enjoy yourself last night, Iman?
I very much did. I mean, the session itself was a mix, or at least not because of the way you ran it, because of what was in that bit of the scenario. It was a bit of a mixed bag, but I enjoyed it nonetheless.
Good.
Just a little bit like, I don't know, I had a bit of a heavy heart after the session ended, though. I'm not going to lie.
Of course, we had a fatality, didn't we?
Good.
Poor Harold. Good. Good.
Classic
Kill those characters.
Yes. Yeah, Andy's character Harold has been teetering for a little while, and he was driven over the edge by knowledge that he learned.
See, it's better to be stupid and not know anything.
Ignorance is bliss, all that good stuff.
As evidenced by Jerome failing his intelligence roll and being all right.
Exactly.
Yes. So, yeah, because
Hello, Straw Piglet. Your ears must have been burning.
Joker's character lost a lot of sanity, but he failed his intelligence roll, so he's oblivious. He's oblivious. So, Halakar, any gaming?
No gaming, but we did have, I don't know if they have it for you guys or not, but we had a free RPG day where stores that carry role-playing games get all these little items from different publishers just to kind of put the name out and get some recognition. So I picked up some adventures for Starfinder and wasn't very impressed with them, but I have them now. And then the 20th is free DCC day. So if you play Dungeon Crawl Classics, they'll have some free giveaways at stores that are participating. So again, I will probably get those and sell or trade them with somebody who can actually get some use out of them.
Sadly, my nearest gaming store closed its doors last year. It went from being a small store. It pushed the gaming store plus cafe plus place to meet, and got itself a really good spot in the center of a busy area of Warsaw. And then COVID came along.
Yeah.
And it floundered on. And after a couple of years after everything reopened, the landlords apparently turned around and says, "Right, we want all of that back rent that you owe us for the time that you were closed."
Yep.
That did it.
To our stores here. My favorite one, the guy that ran it just decided he was going to start doing everything online, selling materials and whatnot. And then the other one that was a nice store but had way too many little kids there, that same thing, rent was all of a sudden due for all those months and they couldn't keep the doors open.
Yeah,
that happened. A lot of shops.
Indeed. Well, so as Iman said, I've run a few games recently. Ran some OSE on Saturday, and managed to. I seem to have got the habit of managing to get things stretched out over a session with very little material recently. That's we'll have to talk about that on the stream at some point. But last night I ran the Dream Zagreb section of Horror on the Orient Express. It's just a short little interlude. The idea being that it just sort of delivers a few messages and motivations via the players' sort of psyches regarding the various people they're interacting with and their connection with the campaign. It is quite disjointed. It isn't the most detailed of scenarios, and I did sort of butcher it a bit in places to actually try and make it work. And I made a bit of a cock up at the end of it, which I apologize to Andy for.
Oh, that's minor.
That's minor, yes. But that's all. I've wiped that one. So, but so we did lose Andy's character. Nothing to do with my cock up. It happened because of what he learnt, and Andy knew that his character was teetering on the edge, and he made a decision knowing that it would end that character's involvement in the campaign. So that's how Call of Cthulhu works sometimes. That is how Call of Cthulhu works sometimes. But it was quite a creepy, if a little disjointed session. It wasn't the ickiest of sessions.
There was very little dice rolling.
Very little.
Until right at the end.
There could have been some dice rolling if you'd have pushed certain aspects that you could have done.
Okay.
You could have, for example, used psychology checks to see whether the people you were meeting appeared to be acting rationally.
Not that I want to be a dice goblin or anything, but
no. But you never mentioned anything like that, so I didn't push for checks. So, but yes, it was borderline.
I don't know about everyone else, but I feel like I was just confused and wanted to further the plot to see if it would make me less confused.
No, it ended up quite confusing. It was one of those sort of scenarios which bombards you with handouts, which on the surface don't seem to mean all that much, but I think you started working out they'd all got relevance to people that you'd encountered.
As we got more and more, the pieces started to slot into place. Yeah. I explained it. It's like if it was a video game, this would be the story exposition part of the game.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It very much was. Just it's only about an 8 or 9 page scenario, and we crammed it all into the end of last session and the whole of this one, and now we can move on with the campaign.
Yes,
indeed. Right, so that's been the gaming this week, and when I started doing my read-throughs and recordings of me reading through, I didn't expect particularly great views on them, because I thought, well, a lot of people who listen to audiobooks will already have their own sort of source. But I'm quite proud of the fact that the one I did yesterday has had 400 odd views. So I have to do some more silly ones. It wasn't that silly though, was it? It got the story across. It just did it in a different way, in a slightly light-hearted way. But I rather enjoyed making yesterday's video.
Well, I think you might be able to get maybe not that big, but a similar reaction when you start reading some of the fiction out of the Dragon magazine, because a lot of those were written by, at the time, well-respected authors. So you might get some people just because they see a certain author's name that'll click in to listen.
Yeah. Well, we shall have to see. No, Saurian, so I played Call of Cthulhu on Sunday with his D&D group. Much fun. He'd only ever played it with me. Which scenario did I run for you, No, Saurian? Was it an Amaranthine? Did you play an Amaranthine Desire? The one with the witches? I can't remember. Let me know, No, Saurian. Let me know which scenario it was, because they all sort of blend into one now. There was one I played with a number of people who don't tend to play much Call of Cthulhu, and that was Amaranthine Desire was one of them. I don't think Nosorian played in Forget Me Not. I don't think Nosorian played. The one with the slug. Oh, yes.
Crooked Mounts or whatever it is.
The Cracked and Crooked Manse, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was indeed. Yes. Good little scenario, that is. Good little scenario. So, magic. Creating your own magic items. Creating your own magic spells. Do's and don'ts. How do different games handle it? Do you use the rules that the games provide, or do you just make it up? Saxius, you were the one who suggested this topic, and so I'd imagine you're the best prepared. So
Yes.
and you were the first person here as well in the waiting room. So I think I put you on the spot first.
Does this answer your question?
Good man.
There are a number of ways which when it comes to creating magical items and creating spells, both of them have got baseline rules. I'm just gonna skim over it because we can deep dive into the actual rulings of the different editions, because I've got first, fifth, and second opened up and prepared for this. So when it comes to the spell research, it's a question of cost and time for both the wizard as well as the cleric, or in reality, any spellcaster. It means that you are. I like using the rules because it now generates the whole currency of the players needing to invest time. And again, referring back to the fact that I do keep a track of the days, the events, the lunar cycles, and I jot down even the temperatures and weather patterns to allow myself, to see what's happening all over the place. That allows
because
me.
of course, you are Saxius, yes.
Well, if he's using the map program that I use, you don't have to. It does it all for you.
Oh yeah, you can do that as well, because there is the map program, which is the fantasycalendar.com,
Yep.
where you can pretty much set all of this up for you, and you can just insert it all there. No, the one I'm using here was one I printed out in 2017, and I'm still using it
Nice.
because that group has just been consistent in terms of coming back to me. So but basically, like for me, it's basically for spell research. I use the core book, the core rules from first and second edition. There's a base cost because it's a costly thing to investigate a spell. It's a time-consuming thing, which for a group of adventurers is a problem, especially if you've got multiple things that are happening in the world. You've got to be willing to say, I am not a part of this. I'm just going to let the world fly by, and you'll come back out, and things will have happened. And then that's a consequence that you've got to deal with. You've now got to play catch-up. Similarly, for creating magical items, I use the base rules, although I find that they aren't as creative as they could be. So I often turn around to, where did I put it now? I can't remember where I put that book now. I think it was items. There we go. Book of Artifacts. I open that up, and I start using some of the creative ideas from there. Because at that point, when you're creating a magical item, if it's a stock standard magical item, okay, enchantments, permanency, these sort of things. But by the time you can cast enchantments, you should be more creative with it. By the time you can cast permanency, you should really be aiming for like the stars. You should be going above and beyond for making something. So that's my quick rundown, and we can go into the rules, as I said. Funnily enough, just on a quick side note, I did read over 5th edition's setup, and the core book in the Dungeon Master, just for creating a new spell, is just 4 bullet points. I wasn't impressed, but Sanathar's Guide to Everything, this one expands on it deliciously.
I've just put a message in the thing chat. I've just got to pop away from the screen for a minute or two. Just bear with me.
We'll keep up and move down the line.
Okay.
Yeah, move down the line. Yes, I'll be back in a minute.
All right, Eli, how do you go about these things?
So, a couple of ways. I never keep myself bound by the rule books, but I do start there. Especially when it comes to players wanting to create things, I always do start with the mechanics in whatever edition, or sometimes just pulling the mechanics from an edition to use in whatever edition I'm playing. Like you mentioned, the 5th edition is awfully broad and general, really uninspiring. Much rather go with something like the AD&D rules or the 2nd edition rules, even the OSE rules, rather than that. But I don't let it get bound by that. Like there's always some room for here and there. And as far as just creating them as a GM, as a DM for the campaign in general, I will tend to go about it much more in that I'll start by looking at similar spells, see what my spell does, and how it compares to those other spells or my magic item. And in the case of spells, then using that baseline, I'll then add a level. Sometimes change the casting. Like if it's a spell that's like a quick cast, maybe make it take a little longer, but keep the level the same. Or it only requires a verbal component, maybe I'll add other components to it. Tweak it a bit to make it fit its ability. But sometimes you can just. The first thing you should always do is look. Can you really just essentially reskin something else? And that's a lot of times what I do with spells and magic items. It's like, especially in 5e where they have the damage types, it makes it really easy. Like, all right, this is a fire spell. I'm going to retheme it and reskin it to be an ice spell or a necrotic spell or something like that. For players doing things, though, I do like to start with what's printed in the systems and then work out from there. That way you have a good, solid baseline and you have a consistent place to start each time.
Yeah. I'm going to jump over to you, Imam. When it comes to things like creating a spell or wanting to do spell research, from your perspective, what would your expectations be when if you were walking into it, either as a DM or as a player?
So I've never played a character that has abilities like that, so I wouldn't really know. But I don't know. I genuinely don't know what I have to add here. To be honest,
you would basically go in with what's it called, with the expectation that the DM would be honest to guide you through it.
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't say I'd expect anything, but I would have an understanding of how spells are in video games, and so I have maybe a preconceived notion of what it should be like. But I don't know if that's right or not. So,
but there really isn't anything wrong with creating, because it's the whole idea of creating something new. So even taking as Eli said, something that's a baseline, use another spell from somewhere else. You can even just say, using something from a video game. It's like, well, I want to do this from this video game. How can we do that? Would you still? Does that help you sort of see like it's a lot more flexible when it comes to things like that?
Yeah, I don't know what's bound by the rule book and what isn't, or whether the rules even matter. Depending on who you are as a DM or GM.
Yeah, but I'd say it's down for the GM to decide how they're going to be running it.
I would expect there to be some sort of limit as well. Like you can't just do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah, naturally. Yeah, Eli?
I think it's important from a player standpoint, kind of going to what Imam was saying. As a GM, when a player is presenting an idea to me, what I want to hear is their idea. I don't want to hear them start talking about the game mechanics. Mm-hmm. I want them to come to me with an inspired, fresh idea. We'll work out the mechanics and the costs and all of that. And then if they decide that that's too much or whatever, but ultimately, I really do want a player to come to me narratively, as opposed to what I want to do is create a spell that does 5d6 cold damage in a 20-foot radius.
Okay. I see. So you want the idea, but not how the idea will be implemented. That's up to you.
I want to start there, and then let's play some. Then I'll ask for specifics. Because
I'm more likely to say yes if the idea sort of develops organically and is based around what the characters clearly. What their motivations are, how they're acting, what their experiences are. I will say now that I can't remember the last time a player came to me with an idea for a new spell.
Oh yeah, rarely if ever.
I made one once, and when I was playing 5th edition, and I made a cantrip. And I was playing my asshole necromancer, who was really smug and pedantic and talked over people and thought he was really superior. So I made a cantrip entitled Ferdinand's Frustrating Filibuster. And quite simply, I just said, and the DM was like, yes, because the idea was it just enabled him to talk over people so they'd lose concentration, they'd lose where they were. So it'd give them issues on persuade checks and things like that because they couldn't catch a breath, couldn't get a word in edgeways because he was so busy ranting and making a dick of himself. We made it quite restrictive. They had to be within earshot. They had to be able to understand what I was saying. I had to rant and keep the rant going, that sort of thing. And thus it was only a cantrip. And all it did was give disadvantage on persuade checks and things like that. It wasn't powerful by any stretch of the imagination. But it was thematic. It fitted the character.
Mhm.
And DM just nodded his head and said, yeah, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, nowadays near Halicar.
We need to hear Halikar's insight on this.
I have never had a player ever want to make a magic item or a spell. I was playing a fighter magic user one time, and I decided I wanted to make my own magic sword. But I make a ton of them to put in my campaign, so all my people who've been playing for 40 years can't say, oh, this is a blah, blah, blah. I know exactly what it does. They have to find it. They have to test it. And identify spell will let them know what school of magic it's from and give a relative power rating. But yeah, they have to figure out for themselves. And so they spend a lot of time with the little village they started with. There was an old man. So he knew a lot of the local legends. So they turned to him as basically he was a sage on local history. But now they've got some things that they're going to have to make a trek to a big city to find someone that might have a clue what this thing does.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly make a quest out of an item, learning about its history, learning about what it can do, learning about what it's capable of becoming even. Because one thing I like to create is items that develop over time.
Yeah, my
Yes,
ranger
John,
has a set of
like
armor
Scrooge.
that has that ability, but he doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard pressed nowadays for a player to really need to create a new spell. I mean, there's so many spells that have been published over the years that you're more likely going to have a player come up to you and say, hey, I found this cool spell in this article, book, whatever. Can I have this, or can my character learn that? And that's, I think, why you don't see the spell creation happen much. And I think that's kind of a holdover from the earliest days of D&D, because we all know that some of those really popular spells, or a lot of the spells started as other players creating new spells in those early days.
They all have their own spells they came up with.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ernie
created for very specific
talked
reasons.
about that, about why Tensor decided he wanted to do this or wanted to do that. He's published a few stories about his days as a kid gaming on his Facebook page, and some of them are really interesting.
Yeah, or like the story behind Melf's, was it Melf's Minute Meteors or whatever it is? You know, how he wanted to, he got tired of blasting everybody with fireball and wanted something a little bit more controllable. I think, but over the decades, every situation has been accounted for. And I think often what you get nowadays is more spells that are different based on flavor and theme as opposed to any new effect.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times now you can just reskin a spell to give the effect that you want, and the same goes for magic items. I mean, who says if you give out a protection device, it has to be a ring of protection? It could be a headband, it could be a tiara, it could be an earring, it could be a nose ring, it could be a left boot, it could be anything.
Belt.
Yeah, belt of protection, boots of protection. Honestly, there's nothing stopping it.
Armband, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Toupee.
Yes. It doesn't have to be what it says it is in the book. You can just reskin and make it what you want. We've lost an Iman. I'm flagging a few comments. So there are things we're gonna come back to. But I'm going to put this one out to you guys who are better read than me. Robert has asked, has anybody ever read The Misenchanted Sword by Lawrence Watt Evans?
I have
Does not.
I have not. Guess we're not as well read as you thought we were.
Oh,
Well, yeah,
Legend
exactly.
of.
Talking about reskinning magic items, it reminds me, I caught somebody's reel or TikTok or whatever recently. They're talking about like the worst magic item, the bagpipes of invisibility.
Yep.
So you turn invisible, but you're still making bagpipes, and every time you have to refresh your breath, you turn visible again.
That guy has some of the funniest videos. I linked a few of them on
I love his art style too. It's almost kind of a comedy Ralph Bakshi style almost. The
I cast testicular torsion.
Oh no.
So yeah, with the eye patch of protection, fake moustache of disguised self, these sort of things. Yeah, of course. Those are the sort of things that you just want to see, just to make things a little bit different. And I mean, spell creation, as has been said, so many spells have now been written. It's hard to come up with something new, and something that doesn't break the game. Which is why I am gonna bring in that question that Lionel asked. Have you ever homebrewed or changed a magic spell and it broke your game or campaign?
I have kind of. I wouldn't say it broke it, but it certainly caused my second edition campaign to go in a direction where in hindsight, it alleviated certain struggles, but it also presented certain opportunities that I embraced and worked into. So after the first arc, or the first big story of the game, where the players had to defeat a goblin and hobgoblin alliance with the Curator that was trying to basically overthrow the city that they lived in. They wandered across, the battlefield intentionally, early, so that they could cast, detect magic and scrounge up and hoover up all the magical items that could potentially be out there. And I had decided that I wanted a lesser version of a Gem of True Seeing. So I had put out a monocle, but it was a monocle of detect magic. So as long as you wear that on, you can see magic. It's just like detect magic. You can see it. You can see the spheres. All of that works to the power level of the wielder. So I thought that was easy enough. It would lower down, just how bonkers, a Gem of True Seeing would be. And I thought that would be good. My players have abused the ever-loving hell out of that. The fact that they are able to sort of go like, we don't know if anyone's in the next door, but my monocle will tell me if they've got anything magical. Because we can see through a foot of like wood. Foot of
That's why you give the device charges.
no, I said because it's the equivalent of looking directly at the sun. You passed, meaning you don't lose your eye. And that brought its abuse down very quickly, because now they had to do like, how powerful is this magic? So they were doing spellcrafts first to sort of like test the waters, and then they would put it on.
I was going to say, is it like wearing, having night vision goggles on when somebody shines a spotlight in your face?
Yeah, no, it's exactly.
Well, in that case, it wouldn't blind you because you'd burn out the night vision goggles first. So looking at that thing of pure magic, you could have just exploded his monocle and said,
well, you can still lose an eye.
Yeah. But yeah, my point was, like, I made that point. The players got a lot more wise to it, and it became oddly enough, it balanced itself out, because I found a way to do this that story-wise created a scenario where the players were now more cautious about using it, and mechanically it meant that I could now breathe a little bit more easy about having, people with magical items walk around. because he wouldn't be wearing it 24/7. But it was definitely something where the tone of the campaign changed. I'd definitely say that.
I have not had anything break a campaign, but I have had to quickly edit a spell for an oversight on my part. And it was cool because I created a custom spell, and one of my players then used it because for my 5th edition campaign, I'm making good use of the online homebrew generator, homebrew stuff, and so my homebrew shows up at my players' spell choices when they're going and choosing new spells. And so he grabbed this spell, and then I realized that I had not put a range on this teleport spell.
Oops.
And he was, because it was, the spell itself is called Lightning Rite, and the idea is it's sort of a variation of Misty Step, but you convert yourself to, you transform yourself into a lightning bolt, and then move in a straight line 30 feet from where you are to where you want to be, and then you do damage to everything in that line as you travel.
Right.
Except for if you hit the same things that will bounce back lightning bolts, things that are immune to electricity, stone, things like that, then you basically come out of the spell, thunk, and get damage to yourself. But I forgot to put the range in there, the distance. So he's like, I'm going to teleport 180 feet. Like, no, it's supposed to be a combat spell to be used in the middle of battle to get yourself point A to point B and then do a little damage along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was really trying to abuse that one up front.
I don't think I've created something that has destroyed a campaign, but I will say that there's a certain magical item in a certain adventure that I love to bits, which I should have found a way of avoiding the players getting it. And that is the Wand of Force in the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun. Because my party abused the hell out of its Wall of Force capabilities, and thus completely managed to funnel the Hill Giants throughout the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief into exactly where they wanted them by throwing these walls of force around everywhere and preventing the Hill Giants from swarming them. They just managed to pick them off really easily. They just went, wall of force, wall of force. Hill Giants can't come from that direction, can't come from that direction. They're all going to come from this direction, and we're going to splat them.
In the evil campaign that I played a cleric of Tharizdun because, well, you have to. And he got that wand, took it as a weapon proficiency with the basically the lightsaber aspect of it, and it got ugly fast. He's like, stand out of the way, fighter. I got this.
Yeah. That is one overpowered magic item.
The one that it didn't break my campaign, but it pissed off some players when I countered it. I had this pair that absolutely loved Dust of Disappearance. They would put that on. They would just, they'd go through an entire dungeon, not touching anything, just looking in every room they could, doing everything they could without, whatever. Well, they tried using that in the Temple of Elemental Evil. On the first level of the temple itself is the Earth Clerics. Well, these clerics aren't stupid. They knew people were going to be, especially with all the infighting between the 4 different elemental nodes. So the Earth Cleric would have several of his Earth Elementals spread themselves out into basically a 1/4-inch thick sheet of dust. They never asked what the floors and tunnels of this place looked like. So when they were trying to sneak invisibly through to get to where the clerics were and kill them without having to fight all the underlings, they were getting ambushed time and time again. I was like, well, that's not fair. Nothing can see us if we're invisible, blah, blah, blah. It didn't work. The cleric knew exactly where you were because his elementals were telling him, yeah, he's walking across me right now in this area. And they were furious that I had broken their cheat, and they quit the game.
Yeah,
I applaud you, Elika. That is.
I applaud you as well. I think that's
that's fair.
You're playing the bad guys intelligently. You're using the resources the bad guys have at their disposal, because those earth elementals could easily be thwomping the party, but no, they're just watching the party.
Well, and the idea came to me just from spell descriptions. Hallucinatory terrain, part of that spell is you have to summon an earth elemental, and that's what causes all the distance distortion and all that other kind of stuff. And so, well, if a magic user can use one like that, I'm sure a cleric dedicated to the sphere of earth could command them to do that and more if he wanted.
Absolutely. So Lionel brought this up because he said that he made something that destroyed both I6 and N1, I believe, but he hasn't got into any details and hasn't told us how he managed to destroy them. So yeah, I feel there should be a story incoming in chat from Lionel, because I want to know what you did, because those are tough modules, and yeah,
they threw their toys out the Bramhalla car.
Yes,
yeah.
I had a module pretty much fail on me because I failed to take into account changes between editions. When I was trying to convert my then 5th edition group to a more old school style of play, one of the first modules I converted for them was L2, the Assassin's Knot, because I wanted to run them through a whodunit, quite an open whodunit, and have them exploring a town with all manner of stuff going on, but just give them the freedom to wander that module allows. And the problem is you've got to interrogate people and you've got to make decisions, and if you have at your disposal the spells Detect Thoughts and Zone of Truth, both of which exist in 5th edition and are quite easily spammable at fairly low levels, it completely nullifies most of the adventure, because you can work out pretty much straight away who's telling the truth. And even if the bad guy has a medallion that blocks ESP, that's a big flag to say to say I'm the bad guy because you can't read my thoughts. So yeah, they solved that a little bit too easily. Hey ho, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, if you've got nothing to hide, why would you need that, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah, so they were just interrogating people and saying, "Oh, we're just going to make sure you're telling the truth." And of course, I'm telling the truth. Well, just making sure. And you've got nothing to hide. You've got no problem. Especially if this is clearly a lawful good cleric who is casting these spells. So yeah, it's the fact that you could spam spells so easily in 5th edition, but especially those 2 spells, completely destroyed that adventure, unfortunately. But we still had fun. We still had fun with it.
Yeah.
All I hear is, this is another thing that's wrong with 5e.
Yeah, well, the adventure wasn't written for 5th edition. That's the thing. It was written for 1st edition, where
Right. Okay.
You couldn't just always pick and choose your spells as a magic user, and clerics couldn't read minds in the same sort of way. So you could have a magic user with the ESP spell, but the odds are lower.
Okay.
So
it's not
hey-ho.
overpowered.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
So any more things in chat that I've got starred? If your items can change, can the item decline and you lose magic? Absolutely. Especially
for that, yeah.
Pardon that, mate?
I was going to say if you build the item like that, or it's how it works in the game.
What I was thinking here is obviously items can have charges, but I like items that have specific purposes. And once that purpose is achieved, The item has done what it was needed to do. Its purpose is no longer there.
No, and
What, so
any
it
time a
stops being
dispel
magical?
magic is cast, there's a chance that it's going to nuke items too.
Yeah,
A lot of people
that's true.
overlook that.
Yeah, that
You know,
is true.
they'll
Yeah,
use
yeah.
break a charm on the fighter, but they won't think about the fact that all his gear has to save as well.
It's like two of my favorite adventures. I've talked about them a lot. The Sentinel and the Gauntlet. In the Sentinel, the party find a very powerful magic item. Once it has served its purpose, it's no longer as powerful. It's as simple as that.
I don't know, like, because I rarely go in the direction of magical items losing their potency. I often try to tie, and I've said this before, I try to tie magical items into legends and lore of the people who have been wielding it, so that there is a story behind it. So, you know, fighters who are quick to always get into a fight and fight bravely or valiantly, I'll be making it a weapon of speed, so that they will always draw first, always get the first initiative in a combat round, and allow them to get in there and then have a bonus to that, because there's a story behind it, there's a purpose behind
Yeah,
that,
there's
that
a reason
weapon.
the weapon became magical.
Exactly. So that's what in my Saturday group, all my players, the item that they had since level 1 has become magical, because they have throughout this year they have gone on so many adventures, they have done so many things, and that's why they are now they now have got either a magical bow that is allowing them to enchant their what's it called, their arrows that they can, that has got stocked in invisibility spell within it. Um, the wizard has a tattoo that's now flared up, and he's able to store spells that reflects a dragon's breath of one form or another. And well, the bard, before he perished to the Auntie, he had a lyre that was basically enabling him to have a number of other spells that he could basically conjure forth via song. And yeah, no, these were things that I gave out to the players, because they had kept these things, and it was in theme for how they were very stylish. The wizard, it was very bombastic, very aggressive with his spells, so of course he would have offensive capabilities. The thief mage was very much about stealth and sniping people, so invisibility and enchanting his weapons was a very key thing for him, and he loved it. And the bard, again being a bard, being able to have his magical instruments was a key feature that allowed him to sort of transcend up and become more. So I've always gone in almost like a one way street. But that's because like I don't know, the idea of like it going the other way, where the legends fade, that to me just seems to sort of go like, okay, well, if that's the case, then that would mean that the number of items fluctuate depending on how many adventures and how many stories are being told. In which case,
Why not?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've never gone down the route of considering that.
Yeah, I think that for me, that's more of a thematic element, magic items that, and like even in the case where John mentions for the two modules, those are specific items tailored for that adventure. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having magic items that are designed for specific tasks and then don't really do it. A magic key that unlocks the fortress of da da da, or whatever, or the arrow of slaying that's designed to kill this one thing. Those are fine. I've never done items that diminish in power as a matter of course. I have done items that diminish in power as you use them. Like they're we've all got items that have charges, but even more so, I've done some items that become less effective the more times you use them. So I have done that, but that's built into the item. Like I said, it's not a blanket thing. I do like a lot of one use items, or things that are disposable, expendable.
Okay. Well, was something I was gonna bring up that. Oh yeah.
I mean,
Then
the way that I would think about it, if an item is used for the purpose that it was designed for, surely it should get stronger in that.
There's a case that
could-
magic is fixed. You know,
Oh, it's
it
actually got.
depends. Yeah, it depends on the item. It depends on how the item is created, I guess. I'm going to bring up this is what I was thinking of here. This comment: do you have a magic item you created for an adventure you are most proud of creating?
Scrooge.
Well, no, there's one similar to Scrooge. I've done that sort of thing before, but I'm going to come to that second.
Okay.
There were two items that I'm really happy with that I've created over the years, both for the same group of players. One was when I was running the Lost City. I was running the Goodman Games 5th edition conversion of the Lost City, and one of the players was playing a ranger who fell back on using his bow as much as possible because, of course, he's a ranger. And one thing that adventure is short of is decent, interesting magic items that are associated with ranged combat. But I was always I was treading carefully because in 5th edition the characters become very, very powerful very quickly if they progress at a normal rate. And in the Lost City, one thing it doesn't do particularly well in the conversion is scale the way it increases in difficulty. You can have some really trivial encounters when the party are level 6, 7 or so that wouldn't be trivial if you were playing basic D&D. But if you're playing 5th edition, suddenly they are very trivial. And this party was starting to mash their way through lots of things. As that's what happens in 5th edition. You've spoken about that before, Elfbait, how it can be hard to keep challenging people in 5th edition.
Oh yeah.
And with it being an old school adventure, there's quite a lot of magic and loot in there. And most of the party were finding magic weapons and things like that. And the ranger didn't find anything of any real interest. And I thought, well, I want to give the ranger something. There's nothing in the adventure really for the ranger. So what I created was a bow that it had no hit bonus, no damage bonus, but it would fire arrows that on command could be tipped with cold, fire, acid, or electricity. So that on command, the player could choose to cause fire damage, cold damage, acid damage, or electric damage. Simple as that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And the player loved it because suddenly it even though it wasn't really doing much more, it could hit things that could only hit by magic weapons, which is good, a good start. No extra damage, but suddenly he was sending fire arrows into creatures that he could imagine burning and just things like that. And he was enjoying having an item that would do that. And it didn't break the game in any way, which didn't cause any extra damage. It just meant that this character could do something from time to time.
That's cool.
But the other one was very similar to the hammer Scrooge that Scrooge the hammer belonged to a dwarf called Ebenezer, in case you wondered. That's in my OSE game. But that's actually a little bit based on a hammer that I've mentioned on the stream before that I put into a game on purpose because I'd got a player who was a little bit of a prankster, a bit of a troll. Not really a one who was malicious, but just he could be a little bit childish sometimes. And every so often, if he'd had a bad day at work, his character would just cause mayhem. And he rolled this very, very stupid dwarven fighter. and he used this dwarf character's stupidity just to play it up from time to time and just be a bit of a pain in some adventures. He found a wish at the end of one of the modules, UK1 Beyond the Crystal Cave. If you complete that, the party gets some wishes that are designed to be used to break the curse and get the complete the adventure. And in all likelihood, they will use almost all of the wishes to get everybody out of there and rescue the people they need to rescue. And the party had one wish left, and this was the dwarf's wish. And his words were, I wish for the bestest Warhammer ever. His character talked in a childish manner because his character had like intelligence 5, wisdom 6, or something like that. Intelligence was 6 and 6, or 5 and 7. They were both low, very low. They were right at the minimum that you could really have for a dwarven fighter. And so I had a little wooden. Oh, Richard. Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much indeed. Hello, Manfred, but thank you, Richard. Now this hammer was intelligent, and it appeared as a little wooden pendant. The next time the character gained a level, it grew into a wooden warhammer, and it continued to grow and develop with the character. But it was intelligent, and it had an intelligence and ego which allowed it to control this very stupid dwarf very easily. And it was of a good alignment. So all of a sudden, when this player was up to his tricks, playing the fool on a Friday night, Hammer said no.
And because it was easily manipulated. Yeah.
Yeah, the character was easily manipulated. But the player liked the hammer. It's just that I managed to calm the player down with this hammer. The hammer was called Henry. And bonus points to anyone who would know why I would call a hammer Henry.
Call it Henry?
My first instinct was Henry Hoover, but
I could see Maxwell.
On Henry?
There was a British boxer called Henry Cooper who knocked Muhammad Ali out. Knocked Muhammad Ali down.
Yes.
And Muhammad Ali famously got up and beat him. And
is that the one where he was knocked out on the way down, and when he hit the canvas, he woke up?
Pretty much, I think so. Yeah, yeah. And his punch was known as Henry's hammer. My players didn't work it out either. But there we go.
So I have a couple of items. They're not stellar items. They were just really fun. I've mentioned them before on streams, but there were two that stand out for me. One was Liar's Cheese. It was a cheese that if you ate it, you could only tell the truth for an hour. And famous to be, it was originally designed by, it was originally created to aid a noble or a king, and then the recipe had gotten into the underworld, so now thieves would use it to get information and blackmail people.
Okay.
So for that whole campaign, nobody trusted cheese. And then
I don't trust cheese, but for other reasons.
Well, yeah. The other one was fun because it was an item that nobody in the party wanted. One player ended up getting a hold of it by the fact that he had last pick in this horde, and it ended up being a game changer. It was the feather of heinous tickling, and it appeared as just a simple golden feather, and everybody's like, well, what's a golden feather gonna do? And so they're like taking the sword, and taking the armor, and taking the whatever, and this one player ended up with the feather. Well, upon command and designating a target, it will go out and essentially cast Tasha's hideous, uncontrollable hideous laughter on a person, and they used it to beat a dragon, because this, it went out and it's doing its thing on its own. So the rest of the party was able to fight this dragon while it was incapacitated by this item. So after that, everybody's like, and the other, I guess there's an honorable mention, which is the hammer that I put in this one dungeon that looked like an ordinary rusted blacksmith's hammer, but was actually a minor artifact level item because it was tied to the history of the fall of that keep. It had the soul of the blacksmith in the hammer, backed by the spirits of all the children that he died protecting, but ultimately who all died. So this hammer just had this like massive spiritual power behind it, but nobody ever picked it up because there's nothing in here, just a rusty old hammer and some old blacksmith stuff.
To have that monocle of detect magic on them, Sextius?
Yeah, it's.
Well, they were at to be fair, they were at that keep to get a specific thing. So I think they were more focused on the mission than doing the typical adventure thing where we're going to check every last corner for everything. So
yes, right. Those of you who, Iman, you haven't got much D&D sort of experience, but do you guys have a favorite standard magic item from any version of D&D?
Potion of Vitality.
Why?
You know what it does, right?
Make you vital.
You don't need to sleep. You don't need to eat. You don't need any of that. It is methamphetamine for wizards. I love to sprinkle these things in there because if a wizard realizes that you don't need to sleep, awesome. But wait, if you can now spend, those like 8, 16, 24, you can do 3 days of studying in one day. All of a sudden, all these spells that you've accumulated up, all you just have to do is just sit inside your home for 1 week. That's the equivalent of 21 days of studying. And now all the wizards are clawing all over the world because they need that fix. They need this, this drop of potion of vitality, which can only be created by a priest, mind you, which means that there will be regular robberies done to the priestly temples.
Make them addictive as well.
Yes, that's exactly what I do, and I even turned it into a powder form in my Saturday games. And the players are like, we have taken drugs to get ahead with our studies, and
just
my
like real
favorite,
life.
my favorite magic item is a ring of contrariness.
How did I know you'd say that?
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm a fan of the Wand of Wonder. It's just fun
No, you're not.
to watch.
You're not.
Stop.
Okay.
No.
The Wand of Wonder is one of those things of like, okay, you have no idea what you're going to do.
Walk away from your table, John.
In Cult of the Reptile Gods, in my last session, Ramney used his Wand of Wonder 3 times to interesting effect.
Hey, nothing stops the party from getting attacked by the Kelpie you encounter in the sewers, then randomly creating an elephant in the sewers.
Well,
on a more serious note,
creating a cloud of thousands of butterflies that made it so the Naga couldn't gaze at anybody to charm them was quite beneficial.
It's just a fun item to have in use. It's just, and my nephew just loved it. I mean, he's just he's playing a druid with plenty of spells of his own, but he's like, not Wand of Wonder.
But on a serious note, like I love either Gauntlets of Ogre Strength or what's it called, Girdles of Giant Strength, and I've recently fallen in love with just the swords of either speed or haste. There are so many magical items that are awesome, but I definitely go for the ones that are maybe more warrior oriented, because I think that the spellcasters they have more than their lion's share of things that they can get away with. Also,
like the robe of useful items.
Yeah. But there's so many useful items. Like, why would I ever need a bag of flour?
The last time I had that item, I ended up with like because it's all about a matter of patches. I had one patch that was a boat. I had another patch that was a window. I had another patch that was 100 gold pieces. I ended up with 2 of the patches that are each 2 war dogs.
But it's funny because when you are in a situation where it's like, we need to cross this river or we need to do this, like, you need a, I mean, if you don't have the fly spells or you don't want to expend any of those things, having that at hand is great. And especially if it's going to be in a situation where you need to be able to stay afloat.
And that 100 gold pieces turned a potential fight into a negotiation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sort of the sort of items that will give a creative player a little bit of inspiration.
Definitely.
And that's one of them. That is definitely one of them. Right. So, magic items.
Yes.
Making your own magic items.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've started doing, and something I find the standard magic item lists a little bit monotonous, a little bit boring. I rather like the idea of just putting an item in there, a mundane looking item, and then rolling a random low level spell. And that item can mimic that random spell in some modified way, whatever the spell might be, a certain number of times. And suddenly you've got a magic item that is completely homebrewed and unique with the minimum of effort.
I've got a bunch of that kind of stuff in my campaign, again, so that the players don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a ring of basically it lets you see as if it's full daylight at dawn or dusk, but if it's actually dark out, it does nothing for you, and if it's full daylight, it does nothing for you.
Yeah.
I've got another ring that lets them communicate 5 messages per week with a non-giant, non-magical animal. It was something that the veterinarian in town had, but he got killed and the party came in possession of it. So if somebody brought in their sick cow, he could ask, where does it hurt? Does it feel better now? Things like that. It was just something that made his life easier, and now the party has it. And they've come up with some creative uses for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Robert is asking where's the magic polearms ever? Well, I've put magic polearms in.
Yeah, there's been magic polearms.
A2 has a Halberd +1.
I like doing lots of pseudo magical items or like folksy magical items. Like in my homebrew, I've gone through and created a whole bunch of like plants and fungus and herbs and stuff that are unique to my world that players can find and will do magical things. Sort of, if you like the healing herb in the Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. But also, like, I've got special brews that certain races will do, and a lot of times they have side effects. Like there's one. Hold on, I actually got work calling. Gotta go. I'll be back.
I'll be back. Daniel. Hello, Daniel.
How you guys doing?
Yeah,
absolutely
good.
Fine, thank you. Absolutely fine.
Yeah,
Something I'll often do is I'll let the party find a recipe, and it won't always be easy to find items, but if they follow the recipe, they might be able to make 3 or 4 pots of a minor healing salve, 1d3 hit points per application. Won't break the game. They've got to find or buy the items to do it. There's a cost there, therefore, but it gives them something to achieve, and it creates a minor magic item that they can then walk around thinking, I've got a magic item. Even if it's not going to do very much, it doesn't matter. So, but it'll come in handy. I mean, I have put in a Vector Corban +1 in an adventure before.
Yeah.
Who's proficient in Vector Corban?
No one.
No one. Well, you
My-
should be.
My dwarven fighter, when he got all of his soldiers, I asked him like, "So, what are you going to equip them with? What are they going to show up with? You get to pick some of this." And he immediately went, "They're all armed with their Corbins, like all
Perfect.
of them. This is what they're fighting with." And then they've got short swords and hand axes on the side for that. It was just like, there we go.
Perfect. Yeah. Good against armored foes.
I don't know if you want to hear this or not, but you are the pivotal magic item in my rewrite of the Forest Oracle. See, there's these rumors about Yogg. Whenever these certain things come and happen, people will talk about Yogg, Yogg, Yogg. What Yogg is there's a sign written in Old English, but some of the letters are erased, so they've got the TH sound for the Y and an O and a G. It's the oracular globe. Out in the forest is this remnant from a past civilization that if you do the right things, it will tell you the story about what the key elements of the adventure are. So they have to find Thog or Yogg, depending on how they read it, and that is the magic item that precipitates the adventure. So
That's
you
awesome.
are the Forest Oracle.
I don't know whether to be.
It's all right, John. The players are going to find it, and they're going to learn that you are a cyborg from the distant future that's come from a sci-fi world.
I suppose I deserve it. It looks like.
Yes, you do.
Can somebody quickly clip this image of Iman because he's frozen in the most gormless pose imaginable?
Done. I got
Done.
it.
Done. That is wonderful. That is wonderful, Iman. That is. I don't know what you were thinking when your machine your connection froze then, but by looking at your face, it was absolutely nothing.
He
A
looks
lot
like
of
me.
the magic items that I come up with are something that are specific for the person that's using them or the adventure.
Yeah.
So they may not necessarily work for the party. It will be something that has an alignment to it or the worship of a certain deity. So there's not that fear of them getting a hold of something that might be overpowerful. I mean, if that wand of force, if that would have been only worshippers of Thurisdan could use it, that would have affected how it was in your party. But then spells, we jumped off them a little bit. I like watching old sword and sorcery movies, so I will try to duplicate spells from those. Like I've got a whole set of them from Thundar the Barbarian, all the things that Ariel could do. I have spells for all of those. When we were first learning some basic Latin words in biology class to help us understand, the names of these different things or whatnot, I created one called Amabelgia, which is changing pain. And there's 3 different levels of it. And each time it's cast on you, you have to make a saving throw in each of the 5 categories. The low level one, for each one you fail, you take 1 to 4 points of damage. The next one you take 1 to 6, and the highest one you take 1 to 8. So I mean, stuff just kind of is out there in the world, and I say, hey, I bet that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. Iman, did you see the expression on your face on that frozen screen? It's been clipped.
Has it? Oh, I didn't see what happened.
That's all right. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
I like, and Andy's making some suggestions for daft ones. A ring of earth walking. When wearing it and walking on the earth, it feels like you're walking on solid earth. Sax's asked, does it work on mud? No, only on solid earth.
Hey,
at
least I'm trying to find a loophole with it.
A cursed ring of water walking. Your feet walk on the surface of the water. Unfortunately, your head down.
So it's Australian water walking.
It is. But if Mercurius was to use it, it'd be the right way up. It would work down there. Yeah, of course. But no,
I had an ugly stick, which is a staff that a priestess of Aphrodite used, and if someone offended her, she would hit him with that, and make them more, take points off their comeliness and make them more ugly.
Ah, yes, comeliness.
Usually that was women that she thought were competition, but you know.
As you do. Well,
Is that Iman typing?
I know what the
I
problem
have
is.
a mug of anti. So
There we go. You shouldn't be able to hear me typing now.
Was that done?
I have a mug of anti-sobriety.
Anti-sobriety, yes. Right. I think it's time for me to step in. We need to get back on topic.
We do, yes, we do. Go on then. You did all this preparation. Go on then.
At least you know it, right?
What
Okay,
did I miss?
so not a few good ideas and a lot of bad ones.
Are we still talking about actual items we created, or what?
Yeah, but it got diverted into things like cups of anti-sobriety, things like that. Yeah. Anyway, so back onto the whole thing. Now, when it comes to the players wanting to make a magical item, when we're looking at some of these spells, for example, a quick look at into like enchant item, you're already up at like 6 level spell.
Yeah.
Your characters are going to be what, like level 13, 14 before these things are going to be unlocked. You are well and truly deep into the woods of high level games at this stage. I would go so far as to argue that the characters should be able to start making some of these at around 10th and 12th, given that the players can already make, especially wizards and priests, they can already make potions and scrolls as of level 9. I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be able to then start going a bit further out and do magical items, though maybe a bit more costly, and certainly be a bit more time consuming. And you would need to then start introducing the whole thing of exotic items and exotic things to sort of bring about.
Yes.
And then this is where you will have what's called for quest items, quest ingredients. And that this is where there almost starts at least in my experience, this is where the back and forth begins with the players and the DM. And you can take this into a number of different ways. I know John's favorite way is to introduce, things like a sage. You've got to go to the sage. You've got to start doing some research. Talk and in character, investigate, learn about these things. You want to have a plate mail that is fire resistant. You're going to have to get something that is naturally fire resistant. You could be getting the energy of a fire elemental, but you've got to capture that somehow. Scales of a salamander, the fiery beast from the elemental plane of fire. Red dragon scales as another idea, and a number of other things that you can think of. I believe.
Yeah, like back in our old days, we used to actually just skin dragons and take them to the armorers and have them turned into like fire resistant armor and stuff like that. Because it's naturally fire resistant. Don't need magic.
Yeah, exactly. But like these are the sort of things that you should now be. When the players say, I want to make a magical item, it's like, okay, that's great. Let's do this in character. Let's actually discuss like what is it that you're looking to do? Let's do some research. Give me a little bit of gold in exchange for you buying these expensive books of research and legends and all these things. And you can be a bit more hand wavy. Once you're up in the level where you can make magical items, I mean, time becomes a bit more whiffy-waffy. But it's still worth keeping a track on. Just saying. But then that's certainly where it gets interesting, and I like to keep in the rules of if you want to do a permanent item, John, God's sake.
Oh, is that me? Yep, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, with that background, the caption is, "Did you hear that?" No, I didn't hear anything.
Oh, I always put me when someone says some dumbass shit.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm really confused because I'm trying to sort dark mode out for this laptop, but I've done it now, so I'm good.
The only magic item that one of my characters ever made was a sword of life stealing, and we made that in the Drow City in D3. Actually, with some of the stuff we had collected along the way, we killed the vampire and his succubus wife, and took bits and pieces from them, and they were included in the making of that sword, along with hematite, bloodstone.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a fighter in my 5e game create a magic item. So there's it's one of the 5e subclasses that is magical. The fighter subclasses, the Rune Knight. And so my wife is playing the Rune Knight, and there's one of the runes that she can scribe, but she has to scribe it on like a daily basis. She's like, "Is there a way I can create a permanent charm of this rune with my rune knowledge?" And then she wanted to like make one for each of the party members, and so we figured it out, and it was cool. It's kind of a once per day save your ass kind of thing, because effectively it allows you to take the damage inflicted on an attack against you and deflect it to another target. It's the Cloud Rune, and so everybody in the party's got one now, at the expense of like many hundreds of gold and 2 weeks worth of preparation. You know?
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say, from what I'm hearing, I mean, I know, Saxius, you might be a little different here, but personally, I don't tend to stick by official game rules when it comes to making magic items. I just wing it.
Yeah, but so from what point are you looking at this from? Are you looking from you going, I'm going to sprinkle some magical items in there? Because in which case, yeah, that's just easier than sitting down and making it yourself. Or are you talking from the point of view of the player going, I want to take this sword and bathe it in the blood of a fire giant so it becomes a fire sword?
It's again, though, as with making magic spells, I've never had a player sit down and say, I want to craft a magic item. However, I have created adventures which have given them opportunities to make magic items, which have got methods of creating magic items in the adventure as quest points, plot points, recipes. If you go there and do this and then do that and then do this, then you can make the whatever. And it doesn't use any of the rules of the game. It doesn't require 13th level magic user to cast permanency or whatever. It's just part of the overall makeup of the adventure.
I mean, that's probably where you and I are different, because me having done a lot of 3.5, we were regularly making magical items at around like 6th, 7th level, because that was baked into the system.
It's baked into the system, yeah.
So that became a standard for me, and that's why I saw it as like, okay, well, it's all right for this to be done earlier. I didn't particularly like the older school where they said, you've got to be X amount of level to do these, enchantments, and you've got to be able to be level 18 and 20 to do permanence. It's like, no, you can get around that. I don't see the point of that. Just go kill some chimeras, loot their layers, scrounge up all of that, and like burn it all out. My salary group, I've got. Well, they haven't.
I never made it easy.
No,
but it wasn't a case of you need to cast permanency or enchant an item or anything like that. It was like you've got to do this and then do that and then find this and they might not find them for another 6 or 7 months of play, and they might miss them. It'd be up to them to spot where something could feasibly be the item they're looking for.
So I'm just gonna divert the topic a little bit, but my Saturday group, one of the players from the very early beginning, and I'm talking like 3 years ago, he said it was his intent for his character to find a way to tattoo a spellbook onto a wizard, effectively creating the modern day version of a sorcerer in 2nd edition. With the idea that they can wake up and basically redirect their internal magic across to the spells that they wanted and be able to cast them without the need of certain components, such as studying a spell book. They would just have to redirect the magic to different tools to do that. That's been a goal of his for 3 real life years. He has acquired henchmen. He has gone adventuring a number of times. I think he has burned through the equivalent of like 3 major adventures and expeditions worth of cash. I think he's up to like 10 to 15,000 gold pieces has been burned up on him creating the fundamentals for his home, for his research, and he has even gotten like soon to become masters, or the equivalent of someone getting their masters from university. Apprentices who are now here studying and trying to basically combine their forces together to create this idea, this concept. And he was recently given the chance to roll for it because he's now reached the point where he can do it, and he unfortunately failed. But he's not.
Oh,
Go on.
Nah.
that's what, oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
but you see, here's where the good part about the rules are kicking in. It now states that he only has to wait another 4 weeks before the next roll comes over, and then from thereafter, it's every week there's a 10% increment that this increases. His hirelings, who has been doing a lot of the grunt work for him now, they are significantly under-leveled compared to him, but they are able to keep it going. And then once they break through this, they will have an epiphany, and then you're going to have this like continuation. And if he steps in, it will increase the percentages of this significantly. But that's the base rules for like creating a completely new magical thing. And it's the same thing. There's a lot of there's a lot of ambition for this. And I've even explained to the player that he doesn't have to put it at the forefront of the campaign. As long as we have downtime, I assume that his character is doing this because he's talked about it consistently. So that way it's not, the entire group must now do this for 3 years, 3 real life years.
I mean, here's one of the benefits of having this, promoting this style of thought within a game is, you just mentioned it, downtime. Yeah. It's a way of making the player have their character doing something constructive.
Yeah.
During downtime. But it can be a way of ensuring the players rotate their characters a little. Yeah. Because it can take a lot of time. So the player of the mage might have to move his mage out of the campaign for a month or 2.
I mean, I want to give a shout out to Omen Owl and Brian because they've got an Adventure Conqueror King system going in your Discord, Geek. And I was catching up on some of the things that they were up to, and they were discussing things like, okay, we've now had this session. I don't need to know what your characters are doing for the next couple of in-game weeks because there's going to be time passing by and which other new characters are rolling in while they're doing this. I was like, that's awesome. I like that. It means that like there are multiple stories happening in this area. You're not the only adventurers, and the best way to represent that is that the players now have got multiple characters that rotate around.
Yeah. The old stable of characters approach.
Exactly, and that works. Again, from what I read with this Axe game, that was working out beautifully. And I like that as a concept. It just means that as a group, you have to come in with the understanding that this is now a thing.
Yes. And that's the thing I like. I like the idea of people playing a variety of characters, Daniel. I'm putting Daniel on a pedestal here because almost every OSE session, it's like, can Daniel use Angus? Whether Daniel wants to use Angus or not, everyone else is like, can Daniel use Angus? Because Angus is a 5th level cleric with tons of hit points and he's an absolute meathead. So it's very, especially if we're doing Barrow Maze, it's like, Angus, we need Angus. But yes, having this sort of time pressures put on characters and taking players out of the campaign, taking characters out of the campaign for a while, it helps the players play it forces the players to play a variety of characters, and that keeps the game fresher.
I do
Yeah.
it.
So
No, I agree. But so let's maybe turn the attention towards making spells. I mean, we've already more or less discussed that we want to either copy an existing one or get the
Mhm.
theme of what it is that the player want from the other one. How deep into the weeds do you go, or have you ever considered going into it? Because I usually go down the line of I want to know what the outcome of the spell is that you want. I almost start like, what is the mechanics that you're aiming for? Because that to me is very important. I need to know what the impact is of the spell, and then we can work in the fluff thereafter. That's my mentality of how I want to go about it.
I've only ever played the one wizard type character to any sort of level where I can even think about creating spells. I would love to have a long-term wizard in an AD&D game which I'm playing, where the DM will sit there and be open to ideas. And I would always try and, first things first, I would try and make the spell thematic. It would have to fit the environment. It would have to fit the story. It would have to fit the character's motivations and personality. I wouldn't start with mechanics personally,
Mhm.
because and I know I would start if I was playing a wizard and there was already a similar spell in existence. The first thing I would do is I would approach the DM and say, could I modify this slightly so that it fits my character more? That would be a starting point. And
Yeah,
then
but when
if the
you've
DM's
got this many books of additional spells to literally go through,
yeah,
and the world really is your oyster. I mean, this is just the wizard ones for the wizards. I'm saving up for the priest one, but I get what you're meaning. You wanted to stick to the theme of the character. You know what it is that they're trying to go for.
yes,
I can definitely understand that, but I'd still argue, the impact is going to be for the mechanics of what they do. I mean, the one that you've given for this stream, where you're just
Mhm.
talking over people, that's a nice role playing mechanic where you just go cantrip. Here's what you do. Here's how it goes, and then that sort of takes over.
Yeah. It's a simple verbal component. It takes a very, 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 very short. Oh, somebody off.
Halakar.
Oh, you off. Oh, okay. Cheers,
Yeah.
Halakar.
Stuff to take care of.
All right.
All right.
Take care,
Cheers,
Luca. Speak to you soon.
But yeah, the idea of that was quite simple. It fitted the character perfectly, and I wanted to dabble my toes into the idea of creating a spell. I didn't want it to be anything earth-shattering, anything game-breaking. I just wanted it to be suitable for the character I'd been playing, whereby it'd just be a verbal component. It would be a reaction in 5th edition terms to somebody attempting a persuade check.
Yeah.
And I'd say, I'd be like, as a reaction, I'm going to cast this spell. I'm going to start talking over them. And it would often cause an angry response, which was often the purpose, because the character was neutral evil. He was a selfish sod. He would demand to get his own way a lot of the time. Oh, he'd fail. That was another agreement I had with the DM, is that he would have all these schemes, and he was a bit of a comic villain almost. The sort of the Wile E. Coyote type. He's going to fail every single cartoon, whatever his scheme is, and that's what he was like. That's what he was like. He would always be scheming, and I knew, for example, I would never ever be able to sell our Rangers steed, which was a war pig that the halfling ranger used to ride into battle. Every time we went into a new town, I would try and sell that damn pig to the local butcher. The DM was never going to allow that to happen. But I would role play him going to the butcher's every time, saying, "Hey, what do you? I've got a very fine hog. How much for fresh hog? I can supply it to you." And everyone at the table would be going, "Oh, here we go again." But and it would never happen. It would never happen.
Yeah.
But it was just a bit of fun. It was just a bit of fun. It's like we rescued a slave cargo from a pirate ship, and of course he kicked up a fuss because they're worth something. Everyone else in the party wanted to just free them, and he was there going, but they're valuable. And then the paladin was like, "Yes, of course, their lives are valuable." "No, I didn't quite mean that. I mean, they're valuable." and I knew that he wouldn't get his way. I knew that my character would not get his way, but that's just how I portrayed his dodginess. And so this filibuster spell just fitted in. It just fitted in with his sort of slightly comic villain, who would always annoy people.
Sorry, I've been back and forth so much.
All right.
I do like when it comes to coming up with new spells to use in my campaign, not necessarily as a player, but like just to create. I like to look at effects that I see in movies and the like that aren't necessarily represented in spells, but or the abilities of monsters. Like I created a spell that kind of mimics the traditional sort of vampire, monster, or whatever ability to turn into a swarm of something else and then move around. So created a spell that did that. So that's a fun one. Did a spell that plays off the rest mechanics in 5e that lets you steal rest from somebody else.
Nice.
Created
That's interesting.
horrible necromancer spell that causes the membrane that surrounds your internal organs to tighten on the target and basically crush their internal organs or strangle them from the inside.
I like that.
It's called Strangling Call.
I found a spell in one of my wizard spell compendium called Brain Kill. It's a spell that allows a necromancer to either erase all traces of a specific person's from another person's memory, or any variation of such, or delete up to 1 year's worth of memories from that character.
Like an upgraded forget, basically.
Effectively, it's just like another version of like amnesia. You're not losing levels, you're not losing anything of that form, but I had that one planned at a very nasty point, which was when the players were about to enter into an area where the Yonti was around. They had cultists and some purebloods, and one of the purebloods had prepared a ghostly hand that they were going to basically put brain kill into, that would then fly over against the player who was a nobleman of the empire that the Yonti was constantly in conflict with, and they would basically make him forget. And the idea was that they would then rush up to him and be like, my lord, these people are attacking us, help us defending against them," and point to the players, to that person's group, because he has only known them for like less than a year. So they would erase all knowledge that he had ever met them. And it was just a nasty way of basically using dominate to have that player fight against the other players.
Hello, you're wrong. How would you personally judge the level of that spell so that it doesn't become?
No, this is a pre-made one.
Oh, what level? What level is it? I'd imagine it's gonna be like level 6, 7.
No, I think it was like 5th, around that area. Find it.
That is another favorite thing I like to do with spells, is to create different versions of existing spells. Like, I created a spell called Sleep Touch, which is effectively a one-shot sleep spell.
Mm-hmm.
Because sleep is a number of hit dice, right? Normal. Yeah. And I wanted something that you could use more tactically and strategically to like come up to a guard and sort of just make him sleep, right? Without having to cast an area of effect. But sleep is overkill. So I actually created sleep touch as a cantrip.
Mhm.
Because, it's a minor thing. It does about 2d8 worth of effect, which is within the realm of a 5e cantrip. But just looking at spells that exist and then flexing them in different ways, I created a spell called Stone Tell, which is based around things like how you would use speak with animals or speak with dead, things like that. But in this case, you're communicating with the ground or the rocks, the earth itself.
Isn't that one of the powers of the Petch in Monster Manual 2 AD&D?
I believe it is.
Yes,
Yeah, they can do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's you. But again, going back to what I was saying, looking at things that monsters can do to create spells. I thought it was a really cool thing. Not to mention, there are also some other folkloric and parapsychological things like psychometry, has the ability to object read, things like that for psychic powers and all that. So it kind of works along those. Like you can walk up by a stone on a mountain pass. Tell me, stone, who has passed by here?
Yeah.
No, I've just quickly looked up the spell Brain Kill. It is a level 4 spell.
That seems a little low for that level of power. I guess it's quite situational.
It's a very specific thing. It's basically an upgraded version of Forget.
Right.
So you take a little bit of damage. It's saying that, like, okay, your part of your brain has now been destroyed, but it can delete you. You can basically target specific memories, or you can basically go like erase up to a full year. So again, that was another thing. But again, just finding this like across the 4 tomes of wizards is awesome. And there's a bunch of others.
I just like coming up with weird spells, like the Ophidian Betrayal spell that I created. That basically, if the target fails their saving throws, their arms or front limbs turn into snakes and start attacking them.
Oh, that's funny.
What, you turn somebody's arms into snakes?
And then the snakes start attacking them.
That's pretty interesting. I like it.
It also forces them to drop any equipment they were holding.
So question. I'm just purely thinking from a 5e perspective. What if the player played a Yonti? Or would this
the kind of spell that you would expect a Yonti to use, actually?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm just thinking hypothetically, would they be able to, talk snake with them to use these weapons?
I mean, I would say that's one of those areas where the DM gets to make the call.
That's fair enough.
Yeah,
it is magic after all, and
because it is an enchantment, so you could always make the argument that the enchantment is making the snakes do the thing.
Yeah, you're not Harry Potter.
I do like the one variation on sticks to snakes they did. I think it was in a Dragon magazine. Maybe it's even the 2E one, where you can either turn a bunch of little sticks into little snakes, or you can turn like a whole branch into something like a boa constrictor or something like that.
Yeah, no, I've always run with that variation of the spell because I never liked the idea of like a priest or a wizard having to walk around with a bundle of sticks and to throw them out for them to then become.
I always thought it was really good to cast on the the spears that a bunch of guards or orcs are carrying.
Oh, that's a good one. But see, I've run into the argument of like they're not really sticks. It's like, well,
it's a stick.
Like, players argue everything.
DM, whoever argued with me over that, I'd be like, all right, cool. Define for me what a stick is.
Yeah, well, fun time.
I think one thing that defines a DM's approach to magic in their game, 2 things that define a DM's approach to magic in the game. I'm not going to go on Monty Python here, but One is illusions,
Right.
and the other is wishes.
Right.
I have never had an illusionist player character reach an interesting level, and something I would love to have.
What is interesting?
What? Yeah, I'm gonna need to have some more definitions because I've had an illusionist player make fantastic use of Phantasmal Force.
Oh yeah, that's the sort of thing. That's the sort of thing. I've had one player play an illusionist, and he died at first level. I would love to have a an illusionist character, sort of 4th, 5th level. We can start using more spells, more variety of spells, and just want to see where an imaginative player will go with an illusionist. I'd be all for it. I'd be all for it because
See,
I think
it's terrifying.
I could try.
it's wonderful.
I'm not saying I do.
No,
it
like
well.
that's what I mean.
Try.
Like it's terrifying in the sense of like once you have a player. I mean, my Saturday group, I've got one player who has got this level of thinking, and I've had another player who has got this level of thinking who has played, illusionist, and he loves it. It's just about because the ruling of illusions is loosely made. Like the rules are loose for a reason, because it's all about creating it's about creating the illusion, the trick of the eye, for you to then play around with. The player I'm specifically thinking of, they were in an area where goblins were suddenly showing up to be very well trained. Like they actually used shield walls, guerrilla tactics. They became quite dangerous, and the players learned hobgoblin mercenaries had moved in and had been hired to train up the local goblin warrants. And that's what they were doing. They were basically militarizing the goblins, making them more dangerous. And because they had numbers, they were scary. So on the day where the players wanted to do an attack, I had already pre-created the weather, and it was foggy. And the player then went, right, I can create an illusion with Phantasmal Force that goes out, X by X diameter. Now, given that most hobgoblins are around 6 feet tall, if I place the illusion, let's just say 2 feet above the ground, by the knee angle, by the kneecaps or thereabouts, and I create this like thick fog, just make it thicker than it already is. There is no reason for them to disbelieve that just today there is just really thick fog. I was like, yeah, that makes fair. There's no reason for them to roll a save. And then with that, the group of about 6 players all basically sat there and went, I disbelieve, I've been told it, and they rolled it, they all passed, and they ran in, and they had the equivalent of an invisibility spell because they had made a fog that thick. It was great, and it was terrifying for what they were able to do. The same player then went on to use Phantasmal Force to make it look like, without sound, without effects or anything, he summoned forth what would effectively be the Grim Reaper. And given that there had been so much magic already flying around, at this point, and they'd done, what was it, like they had already done not monster summoning, they'd done a bunch of other spells, so the enemy already knew they were spellcasters, and they were afraid that they were powerful. So he would summon this forth with the other players who could speak Goblin, calling out, "Look, our warlock is more powerful than yours. He will come, and he is summoned forth death to kill you." And that set a precedent for me, which several years down the line, I had another player doing the exact same thing, except he used a higher grade version of illusions. This new player had actually been paying attention to how I did the undead. If there's a strong concentration of undead in when I DM, that means that there's going to be layers of frost, because the negative energies that the undead give out, that generates almost a winter-like effect where they concentrate. So he used an advanced illusion to summon out and give out the heat or the lack of heat that the Grim Reaper had arrived in his full glory. And he began swinging his scythe around. And I just rolled save or die because the hobgoblins had no reason to disbelieve it. They had gone through a humongous siege where spells, fireballs, and all these things had been called out. Monsters had been summoned, including owl bears, in the middle of this fight. And it was horrific. And then they used this illusion to do it. Brilliant. Illusions are for a person that can think creatively. You can have your party tripled in size with Phantasmal Force. You just need people to just stand there silently and look. And improve Phantasmal Force, you can add a few more details in, like movements or, things here and there. And then
and as long as that creative player thinks of a way of making sure that the monsters have no reason to disbelieve. And that's what that player did by the sound of things.
Yeah, but wait, there is more. What you see, I've talked to a DM who has then said, but I'm going to use illusions like this against the players. I'm going to have some devils while the players are out at sea, and they're going to swoop in, but they're now going to pretend to gate in their friends, and then they're going to have illusions of themselves appear, and then they're going to have the illusions fight the players, and they're going to have these 3 devils do that a couple of times, within reason, to then create this like mirage of like monsters that the other players were fighting and trying to get to come up against. And because the players believed it, that's actual attacks, that's actual damage, until one player shouted, "I don't believe this is bullshit," to which they were allowed to do their first save.
Yeah,
they disbelieved it. That DM did say that he was almost strung up and killed by the players because they were not happy with it. But
look, if the players can do it, so can the DM.
Exactly, and I like it. It's fun.
Biggest use of illusions my players have ever used is usually to camouflage themselves. Very rarely do they have had anybody ever use illusion magic to attack. Probably because we've just never had illusionists get that high a level in any of the games I've run. But using minor illusion to make it look like where the party is standing is a section of wall, things like that. It's pretty common stuff.
I mean, in AD&D, our party druid. The way that the party finally got into G3, the Hall of the Fire Giant King, was the party druid used hallucinatory terrain to confuse the Etin guards that were patrolling the corridor. And I ruled that Etins are quite stupid.
Yeah.
And it would start trying to pick its way through this forest that had suddenly sprung up in the corridor. And they were able to get past the guards without setting off any sort of...
But even things like, we don't want to be disturbed, so we're just going to use like an illusion to make it look like there is no door here. There's just a continuation of the wall. That's another way for you to just hide.
Oh, that actually reminds me of a magic item I created, which is a tent that basically creates the illusion of the terrain around it.
Yeah. It's just what's it called? Those elven cloaks.
Yeah, it's sort of like that, except for it's now a tent that you can sleep in and like put your stuff in and all that stuff.
Yeah,
that's good stuff.
And I think with illusionary magic, you've got to have that sort of flexibility as well to run with it.
Well, definitely. But again, so this is all about design of the spells, because illusions is such a flexible umbrella. You have got to be able to design the variations that's coming with it, and it's also one of the more fun ones because of how loose it is. But you need a DM that's willing to work with it, but also a DM that knows what are the fundamental rules of an illusion. No illusion is perfect. There's always going to be something that can be chinked at. But the players and the enemies, if the player is using that, the enemies, if they've got spellcasters amongst them, will then stand there and go like, is there a reason for me to disbelieve it? is that creature doing something that it
That's the
shouldn't
key,
do?
yeah.
And
That's
that's
the
then once that's discovered, they can shout out, "It's an illusion. It's not real. The eyes of this owlbear is pink. They should be green." There you go.
Because the quality of the illusion should depend on the knowledge of the caster.
Yeah, well, to an extent. Like, I'm not going to get too benign about it, but I'm going to make the assumption that no illusion is perfect unless
Mhm.
you're going to be going into like super high level where there's going to be certain spells that are very, down to not just like the details, but like the speech and everything. But that's this is where much like you might say, John, this is where the player's going to have to step in and like show their own intellect for these sort of things.
Yes.
I would not be holding their hands. This is way too.
You need the right sort of player for this as well. You need a player
Yeah.
who's not going to constantly, not be you don't want a player who's going to be the sort who looks for loopholes.
Yeah.
Illusion magic is not there to make the power gamer go ha 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 and just find a way of derailing everything. It's got to be the right sort of player. It's got to be a player the DM can trust.
That's, yeah, but
You think I
You've
could
got-
do it, John?
I don't see why not.
Am I creative enough?
Yes.
In the morning, yes. In the afternoon, no. Same goes for me.
oh dear God.
What are you trying to say, mate?
Anyway, you had a second part to that statement, which was wishes.
Wishes, yes. A spell that has been the bane of any almost every DM in history, because I think at some point we've all given out wishes that we regret.
No,
Later,
Um,
Manfred.
No.
no.
Cheers,
Um,
Manfred.
They haven't come up much in my games either. So I can't say that I have much experience with them. I mean, maybe
I have
back
one.
when running modules it is included in a module.
I have one simple wish rule. It has to be a single phrase with one verb, and thus no clarifications.
I don't know. I think that's being overly specific. I think you
And then I will judge it on the merits of the wish and the purpose for which it's done.
well, is it a wish
I
spell or is it a wish coming from an entity that's interpreting that?
I've never had anyone cast a wish spell. I've never had anyone get that level. It's always coming from an entity,
Yeah.
which
I
allows me
think
to
the
read it.
only wish we've ever had in our games was coming from a genie. And in the instance that it came up, the genie was kind of indebted to the group, so there was no way he was going to really screw it up.
I think the genie could then tell the whether the group is pushing their luck a little bit, though.
Yeah. I don't think they asked for anything insane. It's been a while.
Yeah. I think. I mean, you've got to use a little bit of common sense.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you're like, I want to be the king of Furiondi, okay. Greyhawk Kingdom.
Yes.
It's like the genie's probably going to go, nah. Or it's going to go really wrong, depending on the alignment of the genie. If you're asking an Efreet to do that, you're screwed.
yeah.
He's going to travel you back to the day where the kingdom of Furiondi fell and the king died.
Well, you could become the king of Furiondi, but no one would support your right to the to the throne, and you'd have a whole kingdom rebelling against you. Enjoy.
Or you just realize that being a king sucks because you're underqualified for the job.
Absolutely.
Funnily enough, my first character in D&D, the DM basically said his house rule was, if it's the first time playing, you are allowed to sit down and roll on the magic item table as many times as you want until you get what you effectively want. We were kids. We could not read English. We relied on him to tell us what it was. And after rolling a number of times, I ended up with a bottle of the Ifrit. And I had, I think it was like 12, 13 commandments. No, not wishes. Not an insane Ifrit. Just commandments, he would come out and then do whatever I told him to do, which was awesome. But I didn't understand the difference between genies and Ifrit, so I just went, I treat him with utmost respect every time he comes out, which the Ifrit was like, you what?
To be fair, a genie is a type, an Ifrit is a type of genie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
What is this word you are saying?
Ifrit.
As in the...
Yeah.
Okay.
That's.
No, but I've never played the Immortals system from Beckmate, though I will be for the first time at Clericon later in the year.
I haven't touched it either, but I think for me it's almost intentional. I only own the what's it called? Actually, no. Do I?
Yeah, I was never
No, I
interested in the immortal level. All the way, I mean, up to the master level of Beckme intrigued me because you were getting up to just a high level character play, but immortal, like I don't feel the need to play God. You know?
No, I don't want to either. I don't. Want to. Hello,
I've
Ralph.
I've had my God complex for a period, and thankfully it's petered out.
Yes, it's just a phase.
It was 3.5.
Yeah, I guess maybe for clarification for IQ in D&D, they have taken all of the kinds of the like they've got the Marid, the Jinn, the Ifrit, and the Tao, and all under the subheading of genie. And then there are actually a whole bunch of other genies if you go to the Al-Qadim setting because they had the tasked genie and everything.
Oh yeah.
And then Cobalt Press did a whole genie supplement for 5e actually, which is amazing. I've always liked genies. Genies are cool, and I think they get overlooked. And not to go off on a tangent here, but you often got demons and devils in games, and then maybe some celestial beings. But the genies they fill that same role, but they're elemental in nature as opposed to alignment, even though they have alignment. So it's just a new way to have another kind of paranormal, supernatural being that's not a demon or devil again, you know.
We've been joined by Slan and Mage. Hello, chaps. How are you pair doing?
Might as well got Ralph.
The Canadians.
I've already said hello to her.
Oh, did you?
Ralph?
Pardon me.
Yes. Ralph, who we found out possesses an even finer beard than any of us here. Elf face looking.
Mine's nothing special. It may be stacked up to you guys, but I mean, this is as big as it gets. It will never get longer than this.
Anyways,
but it gets thicker, right?
Nope.
No.
The only way it gets thicker is if I let it grow into my neck, and I have I'm not going to be a neck beard. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No.
I mean, as it is, I'm unshaven as enough, but it unfortunately my genes say no, only this long.
my wife says no, so mine's just going to stay trimmed now.
If I start growing it out, and you can find pictures of me in some of my old stuff, it gets very Santa Clausy, and then it just starts growing out.
Yeah.
So if I let it go too long, I end up looking like a were sheep. But
anyways, so in terms for wishes for you, it is for you, John. It's basically all about the source and the wording of the wish.
One sentence, and I will judge the outcome based on the source and what the player is asking for.
I am more akin to the devils. I tell my players to write it out and that they have to say it all in one go. And I then get out my highlighters and I look for any of the English conjunctions where you try to take two sentences and join them together, because that's a no-no. It has to be, as you said, one sentence, which means I get to pick them apart. I don't share these rules, John.
All right,
I
so
let them...
no ifs, ands, and buts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no ifs, ands, and buts. Yeah,
but
I have a no ifs, ands, and buts rules. It's one phrase.
Yeah, but I take it, ifs, ands, buts, however's, although furthermore is anything like that, I will just go in there, go nope, and this is what you get. And then again, depending on who it is, yes, I'll do that. But if it's just it's the wish spell, well, the rule says it is the most direct path, the path with least resistance. So I would normally then go like, okay, I now need to take what you've said. It's not going to happen now. We might even end the session early because I now need to sit down and mull over what is the most direct path for the universe to go. Let's go for this. And the example I have was where I gave a group early on in a 3.5 game a wish spell because I figured, hell, we don't see it often enough, so I'll give it out to the group. The person who got it didn't know it was a wish spell. It was granted to him by the god of magic, who basically went like, "You're doing good work." They've gotten a bunch of spells added into like the spell books to be given up to the god of spells, and to expand the knowledge of wizardry. So that was a small sort of like token from the god to him, in hope that he would continue on with the good work. The players then got very greedy, went excavating, ignored all the warning signs, even going so far as to just getting pickaxes and shovels and digging through the dungeon to get to the bottom layer where an entrapped lich was based, whom they proceeded to then accidentally free. The lich proceeded to, well, as in like they wanted his loot. They thought he was like in a coma, but he was just trapped inside of a sarcophagus. The players were beaten, battered, and bruised. They ran. It ended up with like one player basically cutting the rope, leaving other players behind. And the person with the wish spell was taken captive. He gave up the wish spell, not knowing what it was, to the lich, who then basically shoved him in a broom closet for about a week, and then said, "Okay, you can leave now." And the result of the lich's wish was that he should be free, but the conditions of his curse was that he can only be freed when the stars align in a certain way, which would never happen. So the planet just shifted itself ever so slightly in a certain axiom, so that the stars would align exactly that way, plunging the world into a apocalyptic winter.
I've never had wishes come up in my games much, like I was saying before, but I have always had a general policy on wishes, kind of in the back of my head. That's honestly, I don't, and this may be unpopular, but I don't feel really the need to twist them and screw them around too much, because they come up so infrequently that it's such a cool opportunity for players to have, that I don't really feel right screwing them with them. Granted, if they're being stupid with them, then it's going to bite them in the butt. But I don't feel any need to go out of the way to twist their wishes around. It's just not going to come up that often. I mean, if they had the wish spell and they were abusing it all the time, but I think it takes so much to cast wish anyways. But
the biggest ups wish I think I've ever had cast in one of my games was Tomb of Horrors. The final character alive just screamed, I wish to meet the creator of this foul dungeon so that I can give him a piece of my mind.
Oh dear.
And he was instantly transported into a Cerarax tomb. Just him in this darkened 10 by 10 chamber. And when he put his light on, in front of him was this skull with gems for eyes. And that character was never seen again.
Okay, so yeah, to just work on what Eli said, I do agree that when wishes come up, they should be rare, they should be meaningful, and you shouldn't, go too much out against it. The times I've given out wish spells, it was when I was younger, and it was definitely when I was a lot more adversarial, I would say. I've grown a little bit wise over the years, but yeah.
Well, I mean, that wasn't targeted at you. It's just kind of getting my last 2 cents in there.
It's a good point. and I want to reinforce it.
No.
And yes, Geek, I approve of that use of the spell. Send him in there, and then fade to black. We all know what happened. Just how it happened, that's not important.
It's unimportant. No. That was a good way for the module to end.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting thing. So magic items, real quick point. How do you interpret them being used by creatures that are normally supposed to use them? For example, in one of my campaigns, we had a centaur get wings of flying, and so effectively he was running around like a Pegasus centaur from that point.
Yeah.
We decided that there were magic items. It doesn't. It just says on your back. He's got a back. He's got two of them, in fact. But and I know in like old school D&D, there was a lot of wiggle room. Like it talked about how like rings and stuff would shrink, and things would often change sizes. Like I think even plate mail and stuff back then, like magic armor back in the day, could even change shape. But yeah, I feel like there are some things that just don't work. Obviously, like if it requires hands, you have to have hands still.
Yeah.
If you're up against an intelligent enemy, then of course they're going to be using what they've got in their possession to their fullest.
Yes.
I do interpret, however, that like if you encounter a monster that's got a magic item and it doesn't necessarily have the requisite digits or whatever, that it's a modified version for that monster. Like, all right, it's got a tentacle ring.
Just beholders have rings on their teeth.
Yeah.
There you go.
Or on
That's
their
how
eye
I'd use
stalks. Rings on their eye stalks.
Or just like piercings or anything like that. Like I just get creative with things like that. I mean, I've had dragons like after they've had their fight with the players and they've everyone's gone their separate ways. The dragon's gone back. It's like, no, I'm not taking this. I'm gonna gulf down these healing potions. I'm going to take this scroll with me. I'm going to do this, going to do that. I'm going straight back in there for seconds. I'm not letting these people go. Whereas the other players are like, oh, that was a really tough fight. We're glad that dragon got away. We're now going to set up camp. We're going to rest. We're going to do all that, sleep, and oh no, here it is again. It's like, yep, I'm back for round number 2.
What the hell did you think was going to happen?
And listen, some players think, I've had players come in with the mentality of like, it's just like an AI. If we leave its radius of protection, we can just
like its aggro range.
Yeah, it's like I've had players. I was like, no, actually, no. I like players like that. I can torment them abundantly for that. It's delicious. But I've also had players go like, no, he's using the loot. Quick, kill him, fight him, do something.
I had a helmet that was basically a helmet of fireballs in one of my games. Instead of having like the normal visor, it had slits in it that formed artistically the form of almost like a cyclopean eye. So think it's kind of based around the Baylor or the evil eye concept. Mm-hmm. So the fireball would issue forward from the where the eye was in the helmet. So that was on a villain they faced. So like, how is he casting fireball? He must be a fighter wizard.
No, he's just got the helmet. Yeah.
Is there like a stat requirement to use magic items or what?
A lot of magic items are limited to specific classes, and that depends on the edition.
Yeah, so that's in like old school. Yeah, that's definitely the case. In like 5th edition, I don't think there are that many limitations. They have more things like you have to attune yourself to a magical item, but that's because in 5th edition they're basically trying to combat what we saw in 3.5, which was I've got a ring on each hand, I've got an earring, I've got a necklace, I've got this, I've got that, and you will have like every conceivable body part of you will have a magical item, and they're trying to
rings.
Exactly. So they were trying to
polymorph myself to have 2 more arms so I can wear more rings.
Exactly. Like again, these were the sort of things that happened in 3.5.
All that loopholey bullshit.
Yeah, but like again, 3.5 was a different beast altogether. Like it's so high magic. It's Forgotten Realms has got nothing on it.
Yeah, third edition where it's no big thing to see armor classes in the 30s.
Exactly. So in 5th edition, they cut down the number of magical items you could have by doing attunements. I don't like that rule, but that's because I don't exactly shower my players with magical items either.
That's similar to how Dark Souls does it.
I wasn't so keen on attunement either until I started really looking in and realized how few items actually require attunement.
That's fair enough. I like to use attunement in the sense of you don't have to attune yourself, but if you do, there are more things that becomes unlocked to you because you now understand the powers within this item. So I go on.
Oh no, good. Sorry.
Well, the whole point is like attunement should be a thing where like you are putting down a commitment for an item and you're rewarded back by having more abilities, but it then causes limitations.
There is a cool variant on that. I think Matt Mercer brought it up in his campaign. He has I can't remember the term he uses, but they're magic items that once you're attuned to them, they get better the longer you're attuned to them and as you go up in level.
Yeah.
The one thing that I was working on for
like
my
proficiency.
Game, no, it's not proficiency. It's in the magic item itself. They have a name like ancestral or something like that. But I was working on a thing for 5e called weapon bonding, where you could attune to an item, but it was a permanent attunement, and it was a much bigger deal to break it. But while bonded to an item, you would get X number of other bonuses.
Yeah.
So if you're attuned to one kind of magic, does that limit you from, let's say, the opposite magic?
Oh no, you're not attuned to magic. Attunement is to items. Items in 5th edition require attunement. Lesser items and disposable items and stuff like that don't usually require attunement. It's just a way to limit the number of magic items you can have in use at any given time.
Yeah, so that's that. But the whole idea of like clashing magic stems from the wizards, because they might say, "I am a wizard of this school of magic," which means that that wizard would be unable to use spells from their quote unquote opposing school. So a necromancer, for example, would not be able to use very strong divine magic, and he wouldn't be able to use illusions because those schools opposed one another.
That was specifically a 2e thing, wasn't it?
It was specifically a 2e. In 1st edition, the whole specialization didn't exist, and I know it has continued, although they've removed the penalties for all the for the wizards going over in the next editions.
I mean, I do like that concept, and it's something I've thought about bringing back into the game, but 5e doesn't really have a mechanism where you'd have to completely rewrite the wizard classes for 5e.
And I would just go down the route of, you are a wizard of, let's say, divination. You now come across a necromancer. Well, it's time to throw down, because this is high school rivalry. Bring in the Hogwarts dislike of our class or our school versus their school. We don't get along.
Yeah, I mean, you could always write it. You could always write a plug-in system for it, having it where magics from opposing schools worked lesser against the or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, because 5th edition has the very specifically built subclasses, it's harder to work a system like that into it.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest story way. The mechanics that we had from 2nd edition was that you specialize in a sphere of school. That means you get bonuses for learning that spell. You get one additional spell from that school for every level, and you would then have a high resistance to the school that you specialized in. But equally so, your opposing schools, you couldn't learn any of those spells. You would take penalties for every other school. There were some serious penalties for being a specialist, but there was also some decent benefits for it.
Yeah.
Going back to the idea,
it makes sense to me. That's why I was asking.
Yeah,
Going back to the
away.
ideas of creating spells, I think
Yeah.
a lot in terms of spell creation depends on the system you're playing. Satchis, you were saying earlier that the spells have already been made for almost everything.
Mhm.
But if you're playing an old system, playing a very simplified system, like Basic or OSE or something like that, a lot of those spells aren't in there. So it would involve just porting them in.
Which is easy.
It's
Yeah, because the
easy.
systems are so close. Yeah.
Yeah. But
And I would certainly allow that sort of thing as long as I'd sit down with the player and work out the best of version, because spells have different power levels between the games.
Yeah.
So I mean, okay, you want that spell in OSE? Yes, but it would have to be modified to work in such and such a way.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
have to sort of adapt it to how the game's mechanics are.
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah.
again, that makes perfect sense. But again, a lot of these, books like OSE, Basic, they're all stemming from the same thing of like back me and like old school, D&D. Maybe like step down from AD&D. But yeah, like it's not difficult when you're using something like that. I think the difficulty is going to be more in the vein of you want to take something from like 3.5 Pathfinder or even Starfinder, you want to like start porting them back into older editions, or even reverse. You want to take stuff from older edition and port them forwards into newer editions. Because I most certainly have not done that for my 5th edition game. I've avoided that purely because the spells from 2nd and 1st edition, you cannot translate them one for one to 5th edition. Like
The wording of spells is very different in 5th edition.
There are a lot more.
more.
If you look at edition Dispel Magic, it does so much more.
But it's very specific in its wording about what it can affect. There are a lot of spells that are nerfed because it specifies an object that is not being worn or something like that. The language is very precise in a lot of
the
cases.
5e ones are really designed to minimize the fun destruction, because they're all designed. They really. There's this weird, and it's gone out from the rules and into the we've talked about this before, like the hatred over Dispel Magic and things like Counterspell and stuff like that. Oh, they ruined the fun. It just shuts wizards down. Well, that's the whole point. That's part of the fun. It's the wizard duel, right?
Yeah.
And that's part. I mean, it all comes down to your mentality, but that goes to, like you were saying, a lot of the rules are like the item can't be held. It has to be an item that's not in the possession of somebody, or and you don't read about, for example, any of the like things like Fireball, for example. I don't think has a chance to really screw over the items that are on a person anymore.
No.
Like, although to be fair, like in AD&D, you'd be rolling for the next half hour for the saving throws on every last thing.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun of it, in my opinion.
I know, but there's better things to do at the table.
Yeah.
I just like give me 3 or 4 rolls. Okay, we'll sort this out later. Or whatever.
What I would more likely do is just like, okay, based on however many points of damage you took, we're just going to roll a die and you lose that many items.
Yeah. I mean, some of it we can do. But talking about the whole wizard duel, I mean, I've had some fun situations where an enemy cast fireball and the player wizard stepped forward and did counterspell, but then the enemy's wizard stepped forward and did, I've got that one counterspell. So we had this fireball ping pong backwards and forwards 4 times as both sides were just using counterspell.
You can't do that though.
But it was hilarious.
I had my player want to do that. I'm like, it doesn't work that way because you have to have a reaction to be able to do that.
Yeah,
you
but I
have
hold
one reaction per guy, unless somebody else on the party is going to be like, I'm going to use my reaction, and then
that's what happened.
The wizard friend is like, I'm going to use my reaction.
That's pretty much what happened. We had 2.
I've even leaned into it. I created a spell called Absorb Spell instead of Dispel Magic or Counterspell, where basically you cast as a reaction, you absorb the spell, and then you can throw it back out as an action in your next turn in your next turn. So you're like, it's that thing you see in the movies where like grab the energy and redirect it out. I also have another one that absorbs the spell but just transfers the energy into your next casting.
Yeah.
So fun stuff like that.
I love command words. Oh, who did we lose?
Daniel.
Daniel. I love command words. In fact, there's just a simple wand of magic missiles in the OSE game. Brian's character's got it, and if he wants to use it, he has to say pew. If he wants to use 2 charges, he has to go pew pew. It just adds fun to the game to me. It just adds silliness. So I'm going to point my magic missile at my wand, and I'm like, I'll say to him, pew or pew pew, and he'll go pew.
Man words are also fun because then you could screw with players' ability to use their items by having silence cast or
Absolutely.
they're gagged.
Yeah.
I thought the pew and pew pew was a nice touch.
Yeah, it's just a
Can
little bit of fun.
Can you activate that magic item, or that when that that cloaker is trying to eat your head?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my Saturday group recently got a hold of a rod of basically flying. So everyone within 10 feet of whoever's holding the rod can be lifted up, and you can just taxi your way across. But the activation word is up, up, and away. There you go. The favorite item that the group's wizard has got is a rod of lightning, and he has to call out Dol, DORL, and that is basically the players now gotten it in. So like even in character, they'll be like, I get out my rod and I shout Dol. He gets into character because it's now a stable thing that he always carries with him, even to the point of where.
Does Dol mean anything?
It's Lord, backwards.
That's droll.
Oh shit! Yeah, I've made, never mind. No, it doesn't mean anything. Oops. I misspelled it in my head.
It means something in some ancient language.
It meant fuck all. No, it was just something I needed a word, something that was not in the dictionary. So it was like, here we go. No, I completely misspelled that when you asked me. I was just like, oh, it's Lord backwards. There we go.
Because Dol the other way around is rod.
Yeah.
Lightning rod. Right. There you go.
Just invoking the power of pineapple.
Drool.
Drool.
Anyway, yeah.
Brian uses and Grumptals in chat.
And Slan wants to create a spell that allows the caster to find out how much power, i.e. spell slots, another caster still has left.
That would be useful. Like assess power. I don't know what you call it.
I keep... What?
It's a very utility spell.
I'm getting out the whole thing of like...
I really don't think I would want to waste a spell on that.
It would be a good reconnaissance spell. Like if you're like trying to like
scouting a camp or something.
Yes, scouting it out, or like you're trying to like mark out a wizard for something, you can at least find that out. But I keep on getting in my head like a wizard getting out like his Pokemon decks and going, what kind of strength is this, wizard?
I know there's like detect magic and stuff like that. Is there like a detect aura?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Detect aura. That is detect magic as such.
Yeah, so detect magic, you can detect. There's a percentage depending on your level that tells you which school it was. Depending on how you run the game, I run the interpretation that magic is like radiation, and after a spell duel, the radiation will be staying behind for a couple of hours, allowing you to then engage in like what kind of spells were cast. And detect magic will then also tell you if an item is magical, what kind of magic is imbued into it, and what strength that magic is. Going from faint, weak, strong, overpowering.
Is it able to tell you which general direction magic is emanating from? Like you said, it's radiation.
Yeah.
Detect magic generally will make it illuminate the source of the magic.
Yeah, so it's much like in other video games, you would like activate a sensors or something and things will like start glowing. That's how it would work, but it's based off your actual eyesight. So you then have to like move your head around to then detect it. But going back to like the monocle that I'd given out to my player, that also works as a way for you to like see through walls, because you can see through the detect magic can go through like up to like a foot worth of wood, stone, and like an inch of like metals.
And
And
there are
lead.
variations on that do radiuses and stuff too. Like some magic weapons and stuff will detect magic items within 10-foot radius, kind of thing.
And the mechanics of the detect magic spell vary from version of the game to version of the game. There's different versions, there's different wordings all the way through. So, I mean, I know the one in OSE is very much simplified. Although all the spells are, but I find simple adds in more flexibility. So I like it. I like that approach. No alignment or detect evil is sort of like that. Those are clerical spells.
Yeah,
you could.
They're good. They're good ones as well.
So no alignment would tell you what someone is then, without needing to question them or anything.
That is like a pinpoint. Like again, detect evil. Like, are they good? Basically, are they evil, or the reverse of that? Detect good. Are they good? But detect alignment is like straight up like they are neutral evil. They are lawful evil. Like it is a pinpoint at that stage.
So no alignment is the closest thing to detect aura, because that's basically what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That's a clerical spell.
Is there a spell you can cast to basically say, is that person good, evil, or neutral?
I want to say that it used to have a psionic that was read aura. Remember when psionics, and there was like a read aura or something like that effectively was the psionic version of detect alignment.
Yeah. But I think like again, like the detect evil was kind of like the ruling factor of like, okay, so they're not evil, they're either going to be neutral or good. So like at least that way you ruled out one of the three major axes that way. And no alignment was then like, we're going to know exactly what your entire, well, not entire, we're going to know like what your North Star is like at this point.
No, Saurian has rolled out a word that we all learnt as kids playing First Edition 18. Dwimmer, which is basically the aura.
I only know that word because of D&D.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would have encountered it in life, but it's like that's where I learned. Same thing with the word parlay. I learned parlay through D&D.
And I can guarantee that none of us here pronounced it Dwimmer when they first saw it.
This first one I'm seeing it now.
Before I saw it, so I did. So I'd heard the word pronounced before I saw it.
See, I hadn't. It was Dwioma.
Well, to be fair, to balance that out, I used to pronounce it chaotic because I'd only ever heard the word, never seen it spelled, and my brain didn't equate those two. I also didn't realize I'd never heard the word chasm before and would pronounce it chasm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But of course, keep in mind when I started playing when I was 8.
Yeah.
So my vocabulary, while big for my age, was not big. So.
Yeah, but it's the same. Like when I was getting into it, like I couldn't read English, and I was only allowed to be read one monster a night by my parents, and then they would have to sit with the dictionary and like read out to me what the monsters could do.
I had a friend of mine who, as he would read through his D&D novels,
that's awesome parenting.
Would keep a notepad. He would just write down all the interesting words that he would encounter while he was reading D&D novels, and then he specifically grew his vocabulary through reading the entire Dragonlance saga and all of that.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah. There were plenty of people in the hobby who mispronounce words willfully. Most of them are American.
Here we go. Despite
don't make me slap you in the face with the words that you Brits created, then abandon, and then give everybody crap about using.
I'm just gonna let's look at where the game originated, John.
Or aluminum.
Mm-hmm. It originated in the United States, meaning their interpretation of the words are more correct.
No, they're using our language.
It's not your language anymore. They have diverted away for a better language.
It will always be our language.
I believe Saxius has a claim to say that you guys bastardized his language. of that original old Anglo-Saxon tongue. Put it in English.
I mean, he's not wrong there, actually. I have to give him that.
Yeah, I thought so, John. I thought so.
And then, of course, we could probably go all the way back across the continents and claim that, with that whole Indo-European, everybody gets to bitch at it. All the Indians get to bitch at everybody about it because it's all the Indo-European language treaty. So,
I just like the fact that we all come onto Geek's stream and we pick on them.
You're allowed to. You're allowed to. I'm also allowed to do this as often as I feel like it.
Coco brings up a good point about the Gygax. I think one of the reasons our vocabulary is grown a lot is because Gygax just love to use obscure terminology.
Yeah.
Which he stole from Jack Vance. If you ever read anything or listen to Jack Vance's stuff written, I'm like, I listened to one Jack Vance story once, and I'm like, this is the entirety of D&D just coming out in one story. Like all of the whole, like the entire tapestry of early Dungeons and Dragons just unraveled before my eyes. Especially, most specifically, the magic system and the way atoms are and everything.
Exactly.
I think taking the piss out of John takes us back to what you said earlier, Saxius. If the players can do it, the DM can do it. It's the same here. We can take the piss out of him. He can take the piss out of us.
Although we can go further and further on into these topics, I think we've covered the major ones.
We have, yes.
Like the big ones I'd really sort of, if we want to dive into like mechanics and so on, it's like how far would you make players go into like a quest to generate a magical item? But John, you've already covered that by saying that in your opinion it should be a part of the adventure itself, and then that shouldn't be too much of it. So
I don't use the mechanics really for that. I just make it part of the adventure and just have it just sort of hand wave the mechanics a bit. It's all part of the achievement of the adventure.
I did actually think about remember a magic item that was created by a player in my 5e campaign. One of my party, he soloed in Owlbear. At one point, came damn near to dying, except for he managed to use terrain to his advantage. He backed into a little crevice in a rock where the thing couldn't get him, and then like magicked it. But it was a named owlbear. It was like, let's take an owlbear and make it worse because it had like rune inscribed skin. So it was like an enchanted owlbear. And he's like, can I roll to skin this owlbear without destroying the runes that are in its skin? And then can I find somebody to turn this owlbear's hide with its magic into a protective cloak? And I'm like, all right, make the roll, do the skinning. And he came this far from screwing it up. He was like one die pip from fucking up the hide. And then he actually went and paid these traveling there's this culture in my campaign world that they go around and kind of make magic deals. And he's like, all right, I'm going to give you this cloak, and here's a mountain of money. I'll meet you back here in like a month, and y'all have my cloak ready, right? But it was cool. He now has this like basically this cloak that gives him, I think, basically gives him magic resistance. So it's fun. He keeps forgetting he has it, so I never remind him that he's got it. But like when the spell gets cast against him, every so often he'll remember he has magic resistance. It's not my job to remind him.
Discussing now what level you have to be to create a magic spell. Typically, I completely go with my own rules here. Creating a magic spell. I would generally say you have to be able to cast spells 2 levels above the level of the spell you're creating. That's the sort of level I would go at. So level 5 to create your own first level spells, and so on. That's a sort of general level I would start it at. Typically.
In my campaign world, I let people do it at pretty much any level, but it's just harder to do and near impossible to do based on your level. Because I also use an above level casting system in my at least in my AD&D. I haven't figured out how to make it work with 5e yet. But when I was doing AD&D in second edition, I had an above level casting system where you could try to cast spells above your level, but it could really come back to haunt you. You would take wild magic effects if you failed, because you weren't controlling the energy.
One restricting factor in AD&D is resources.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Low-level characters just aren't going to have the resources.
So, I mean, I was looking this up before we came on here. So the core book says, like, okay, once you start reaching like level 8 or 9, that's where like you start making scrolls and so on. And it's assumed that this is where you start doing your research. But the same books also then go out and say you can technically start your researching 4 spells at any given point. But it's basically down to you have to pay X amount per week. So it's usually going to be around like 200 gold for like low level, 100 gold per level or spell level. So for a level 1 spell, that'll be 100 gold per week. You have to spend at least 1 week per spell level plus 1 week, so at least 2 weeks for that. So that's at least 200 gold you have to spend, and then it is 10% plus your intelligence plus your level plus there's like a third thing. It's like minus the spell level you're researching, and then there's like plus something else from there, and then that gives you your base percentage after those 2 weeks that you roll. If you fail that, you can then spend another week, get plus 10% for that, roll again, and continue. So at any given point,
build up.
Yeah.
Costs build up. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're in a high magic setting, you just hire interns. You're still spending money, but you can cut down your time.
Exactly. Like
you can cut down your time.
So you basically have to go out very early on, fight a bunch of bugbears in low level, get the loot because they've got some of the better treasure for the easily available monsters, and then come back in and be like, okay, the wizard gets 1,000 gold. We're just going to sit here for a month or 2, and then he will be able to get like the 1 spell.
But you've really got to be a mid-level party to take on a tribe of bugbears.
Yeah, like it's
yeah.
But again, like we're back to the whole thing of like, if you want to start doing research at low level, I mean, just skip a couple of levels in and just say like, okay, you're not playing an 18 or 19-year-old character. You're playing a 35-year-old, midlife wizard who's gone, I've spent so many years reading books. I need to live, and run out into the wilderness.
But I'd also say it's fair that you could say that in a campaign world, if you had a magic character or even any character who wanted to have an item, wanted to make an item or a spell, they could pay somebody to do it who has the level. They'd have to be paying more, but they wouldn't have to have the skill ability either.
No, definitely.
Like, even in my above level casting back in the day, my players a lot of times would go, risk or just spend a crap ton of money.
I mean, yeah, definitely.
A crap ton of money because I don't want to explode or have my head turn into a flower or become a lich.
Oh, I love that idea. I just want to make it a simple magical item, and I became a lich. Oh no!
Yeah, as it is, like one of my party members in my current game he got one of the negative effects. They managed to find an artifact in the game. It's not one of the super amazing artifacts. It's the Orb of Dragon kind, but it's still an artifact. He got the negative effect that any creature within with less than a hit die in like a 30-foot radius of him instantly dies. So the party's like backing away from him with their familiars and stuff like that. My wife has this intelligent raven that her character has. She's like, fly up there, just stay flying until I call you. The ranger in the party's got this small dog-like creature. It's like, nope, just stay away.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm quite happy throwing in a certain artifact from fairly low levels. That's the Teeth of Dalvanar. Because there's so many of them, and they don't really start building up the power until you've got lots of them.
I do like those multi-part magic items. The things of Vecna, the rod of 7 parts, the teeth, like you mentioned, the teeth there and all of that.
Yeah.
I did have
I mean,
a party almost kill themselves in the basically the mechanical lobster that you have to figure out. What is it? The wondrous device or whatever. Can't remember the name of it. It's got one of those long Gygaxian names. It's the thing that looks like a barrel, and then you get inside of it and start pulling levers, and it grows claws and a tail and legs.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
It ended up stuck at the bottom of the ocean, trying to figure it out.
I think there's like even a Dragon or Dungeon magazine where there's an adventure where you have to go and save a Tinker Gnome who has created such a contraption, and he's in a cave. And he's like, I built this thing. I'm fueling it with magic, willpower, and sweat and blood and tears. I just need you to hold off like the advancing bugbears or whatever it is that's coming in. And then, as if the player survived like 5 rounds of combat with the coming enemy, this gnome is just gonna like barrel his way through the ground and be like, "It works! It works!" And suddenly join them in the
ion stones. The ion stones.
Yeah.
I'm thinking ion stones are the perfect magic item for any character that Iman has. So
Why?
They're stones you throw into the air that spin around your head. So you could sit there puffing on your herb, watching these colourful stones spin around your head and go, "Oh, look, aren't they pretty? Look at the pretty lights."
Not one of those magic items that kind of basically stole from Tolkien, because didn't Elrond have something like that on his head, around his head?
Something like that.
Nah.
Do they cause damage to anything that they hit?
No, but I did. But speaking of odd magic items and bugbears, back in the day when we were stupid kids, a friend of mine let me, I think we were like 12, let me play a bugbear fighter.
Yeah.
This bugbear fighter was adventuring solo. So it was a solo campaign, 1 DM, 1 player. And somewhere along the lines, I found 3 rocks, like small boulders. And the way that they worked is like they would levitate and like follow me around. But until I learned how to work them with a series of successful wisdom checks with a bugbear, they would attack anything I would think about. My poor bugbear spent weeks in the wilderness, miserable, constantly getting belligerent by his new magic items. Every time he got hungry, his food would get pulverized, and he'd be eating like the sand-filled just crap. Because eventually he learned how to use it, but like forever he was like constantly down half his hit points because these rocks were just beating the shit out of him, and all of his things, anything he would think about, like, I want a drink of water, splash, 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 splash. But it was so fun. And then later on, to make it even worse, that bugbear got bit by an elephant who was carrying lycanthropy, and I ended up as a bear were-elephant with a bunch of orbiting boulders. Again, we were kids. It was stupid. It was fun, but it was one of the most hilarious characters to play because you're just so absurd. Like,
yeah,
it's the full moon, and I'm now turning into a freaking elephant. Magic item boulders. I think that was one of those cases where he just made up a magic item on the fly, and we just ran with it. But I loved it because I had to figure out how it worked, and it wasn't until I had to make, I think it was like 10 successful wisdom saves over, and only being able to make 1 per day. Or not wisdom saves, but wisdom check. The old roll under attribute checks.
I gave out one of my favourite homebrewed low-level magic items to the Saturday OSE group very, very early on in the campaign.
Right.
Every session, I was reminding them that they had it. Nobody ever used it. Nobody. A character just picked it up and pocketed it and just forgot about it.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't me,
that
was
is
it?
the one that always gets me, and even in my current campaign for 5e, the players have so much more magic than they actually use. And I'm like, that fight would have been so much easier if you remembered that your sword allows you to cast mirror image. and blink.
It was
no.
it was Mage's half orc warrior, I believe, that's carrying it, and he's never used it. He's never used it. And I'm like, oh please, please.
That's all. With 5e though, I think it's really easy for that to happen because the players in their class abilities, the character class abilities, are so substantial as it is that you almost don't need the magic items, and so you kind of forget about them. Also, the progression is so quick that you never have a lot of time with an item.
No, that's true.
Or even a class ability for that matter. I remember being in a campaign, not your campaign, Saxious, but another campaign where I was playing in 5e and I kept having to miss sessions. And like I'd come back and the guy was using milestones and he's like, all right, cool, you're all level. So I'm like, cool. And I would write up my character thing. And then I'd miss a session and not get to use my new abilities and come back. And they're like, all right, now we're such and such. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Oh, boo, Mage, boo.
I support Mage. The moment you have showed your hand,
no, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Listen, you sound like me. It's a lot of fun. Please use it. Of course they're not. If the DM thinks it's fun, don't use it.
Yeah, I think the problem is there too is there's a lot of especially older players have this usually born of experience with bad DMs or even fun DMs. That if the DM is reminding you of something or telling you to do something, then he's probably trying to set you up.
Well, I'm definitely guilty of that.
I think all of us are at some point. Like, you could use the thing.
Yeah, you could use the thing. It'd be fun. Let's have some fun.
No.
But remember,
you guys trying to tell me that John has our best interests at heart?
But
remember,
okay.
I am that nowadays. I am actually one of those player advocate DMs. I really don't kind of set out to kill my players anymore, or like their characters, or say more accurately. Don't kill your players. It's illegal in most countries.
They have yet to prove that I have.
Well, knowing you have the logistic. You probably shipped them out somewhere.
Listen,
is this why you moved? Is this why you moved to Britain? You've got Interpol after you.
No, because the Interpol's got jurisdiction in the UK.
Oh, but that's
see, I know this. Well. that made you go like, oh, why does he know this? No, it's because it takes 30 days from here to China via sea. But anyway, that's getting dark. Imam, we need you to get into one of my games, just so you can feel what it's like to be in a game where a DM is genuinely trying to murder your characters and really is trying to make it known to you that your character. It does not belong on that fantasy earth anymore. It must be removed.
You realize I've played Dark Souls, right?
Yeah.
The world hates you. The world wants you to die over and over again.
Imam.
And I'm still there.
Let me put it like this. I've had players say that they warm up to my games by playing Dark Souls just to get used to how much I get after them.
It sounds like exactly my kind of game.
Mage, when my players went through I4, there's a necklace of strangulation in there, and it's on a twisted skeleton they find in the dungeon with his necklace tightly wrapped around his neck. And you just don't think the character is going to be quite so stupid as to go, oh, a necklace. It radiates magic. I'll put it on. It's like,
I did tempt my party with a really nice looking magic sword, and it was really cool because they found out that it was a variation on the vampire blade. Like when you would strike a foe, the hit points that were taken from the foe would then heal you. They liked that until they realized the longer they went without combat, the more their bloodlust grew. So the sword was cursed and would actually make for every day they went without combat, they would have like a 5% chance of going berserk and attacking their friends.
A bit of a variant on Black Razor.
Like, minus what?
A variant on Black Razor from White Plume Mountain.
Oh damn! I didn't even think about that because it's been a while since I've looked at Black Razor. But yeah, I started with the Vampire Blade and I just wanted to get Bloodlust because I thought it would be fun to play. And if there wasn't another opponent available when you failed, you would immediately attack your friends. So yeah, I mean I am a player, so maybe I was summoning in the back of my head some Black Razor, but.
Yes, that was a sword that could kill campaigns.
Quick one for Ralph. I'm afraid that the offer is going to stay open, and I will certainly ping you when I find the time to run another game on Geek's channel, because I think it's an experience that must be shared with as many people as possible.
You know, I'm down.
Restart Shadow of the Demon Lord. Shadow of the Demon Lord. Bring the goblins back.
I'm not bringing the goblins back.
Do your fucking worst, I dare you.
All right.
Bring those goblins back. You know you want more pustule in your life.
Thank you to Doc Flamingo.
Hey, thanks, Doc Flamingo.
I like to have very shady NPCs offer overpowered magic items to players and tell them to keep it secret. If they're dumb enough not to see the curse coming, they get what they deserve.
I mean,
why not?
That's like the mafia thing of like, hey, just hold on to this for a while. Don't use this. Like,
for me, it's less about screwing over the players with the powerful items. It's just about thinking narratively and also just going with a lot of folkloric stuff. A lot of magic in folklore and mythology and stuff has a double-edged sword. You know, or not, no pun intended. You know, it's that whole like, hey, you know, there's a cost for this power you're getting. You know, and I think that plays really well, even in some of my minor magic items. Like I was mentioning earlier, I've got like little brews and stuff like that. I do a lot of like culture-specific magic items too. Like my goblins have their own certain little items that they make, and they've got this brew called Black Brew, and it's kind of based off the Tolkien thing where the orcs had their thing. But if a non-goblin drinks this Black Brew, they have to make a save versus poison. They're not dead, but they're like poisoned for like an entire day because their system's just reeling from this. It'll heal like D4 hit points.
Mm-hmm.
But I've even got like, you know, I've got some things in there. There's a special like pipeweed blend that floats around that actually gives a wizard one level of casting ability higher than normal for X amount of time. You know, like you have to find it. They're rare, they're minor, but you know, a lot of times they have double-edged things. Like there's a plant you can find in my world that if it's properly prepared and you drink a broth or breathe its fumes, you can get a Speak with Dead casting effectively. But it knocks you on your ass for a day. You're like unconscious for a day afterwards because you kind of go into this dream state and kind of, you know. I like playing narratively with magic items and giving magic effects that are out there for people to find and learn lore about, or even make use of class abilities. Like I figure a druid or a wizard or a ranger might know about those things. The wizard through his training, and druid and the ranger through their experience and their knowledge of the lore. I also have like leaf weave, which is basically wood elven armor in my world that's made out of giant enchanted leaves. You know, it's not. It counts as scale mail, but it's not actual metal armor.
There's in MERP, because MERP uses a lot of herbs. Where is it?
I am gonna have to say it is punking hours for me.
Okay.
It's almost midnight, so this is where I'll have just about.
Okay. Cheers, Saxius.
Take care, everyone.
I could stick around a bit more. I'm
Take
stuck
care,
in
mate.
Yeah, we are approaching pumpkin hour, but I'm just going to mention one of the herbs in MERP, Merig, is it's a thorn that you brew up. It's 2 gold pieces per dose. Daily use increases presence, which is like charisma, and appearance by 5. The effect occurs after 10 days use and addiction results after 2 weeks. Interruption of use and withdrawal means loss of constitution, intelligence, and eventually presence and appearance.
Yeah.
It's cocaine, basically.
Oh, yeah.
It's yeah, it's but having
I was
yeah,
going to say
those
that
sort of
sounds a
things
lot
to be-
stronger than weed.
Yeah.
But having
Um,
little things like that, or little cultural magic items, I think make it like there's a necromantic, like ancient culture in my campaign that has death dust. It doesn't. It's based after sort of like the whole voodoo dust thing. It doesn't actually kill you. It just puts you into a death-like stupor. You know, my players found some of it. They haven't used it because they keep forgetting they have it. But they have like a dose of it around. You know, like, it's the type of, and those little minor things that are disposable, but also have story elements like the herbs and stuff that can go around.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the whole Hobbit, we have to find the king's foil or whatever.
Yep.
Though if those are out there, then it inspires your players. But also they allow the players to engage in some creative uses like the death dust or whatever. It's
yeah, absolutely.
It's like well, we could get past that guard, or
Right, we have hit the pumpkin hour, so it is now midnight where myself and Iman hail from. I have a
one
busy work
question.
schedule. Go on then.
It's not spell related, but all this talk about stuff that Eli's talking about has got me thinking.
Yeah.
Has any of your players ever eaten the flesh of an undead? And if so, what did it do?
no, not eating the flesh of the undead.
No.
I had one player eat the prepared flesh of the formerly living.
Yeah, I've had that as well, and there is something in the lore to say that that is what creates a ghoul.
Yeah, depends on how much you want to lean into that. No, I've never had a player eat the undead.
Why are you
I was just
thinking of
curious.
eating your undead friend in Call of Cthulhu?
Oh no, I was just. He was talking about things that happen to your players when they do certain things, and for some reason, my brain went to Minecraft because you can eat rotten flesh in that game.
Right, okay.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about eating the dead, I mean, I have had players scavenge carcasses for food when we were playing various survivalist type games. I even created a monster for a setting that capitalizes on that. It's effectively, it's not a mimic, but it's a mimic-like creature that secrets itself inside the carcass of a dead animal. So when you come up to scavenge the animal, it then pops out of the animal and attacks you.
Surprise!
Yeah, exactly. But we did have a party back when we were doing our whole monster character party. We had a 3-creen in the party, and the only non-monster character in the party was an elf. And then they both made their characters without remembering the little passage in the 3-creen description from the old Monster Manual 2 that talks about how they consider elf flesh a delicacy. So the entire time we're running that campaign, the 3-creen player had been bringing and continued because of this gag dehydrated apple slices and had been eating them, saying they were dehydrated elf ears. And then his character had a bag of dehydrated elf ears that he would carry around. And he'd look over at the elf player across the table.
Yeah, I think Doc's right here. I'd be quite peckish to eat the undead. More than peckish. I think ravenous.
Well, this is the thing I'm thinking.
I don't know.
In a survivalist sort of situation, if the alternative is death, would you risk whatever eating the undead flesh would possibly cause over death?
I don't think you're going to get any nutrition from the undead. I mean, there is the real world instances in which mummies were ground up for medicine, potential medicine, like real mummies from Egypt.
Yum. Egyptian medicine.
Oh no,
Anyway, on that
medicine. That was you guys in the UK doing that with all the cheap mummies you got, also known as stole.
We didn't steal nothing. We
Yes,
just,
obtained perfectly legally.
They were being acquired so cheaply that they were being used as a source of firewood.
Anyway,
Yes,
I'm going to have to
you
bring,
there,
I'm
cake
gonna
or
bring this to a
death.
close now. Yes, cake or death indeed. Right. Thank you, you pair who've stayed for the entire stream. And thank you, Saxius.
Thank you.
Daniel popped in briefly, and we had Halakar in here earlier. You pair, you get to shill though. The other three haven't got channels anyway, but you pair get to shill.
Right, my channel's Elfbait. I stream on Sundays, and now every other Monday, where I run my By the Sword campaign, which is a OSE campaign with sword and sorcery vibes, with quite a fun group of heroes who are getting in all kinds of fun trouble. Their most recent escapade was diffusing a fight by throwing a sausage. But
Yay, sausage!
Coco and his sausage solution.
Yes. And Iman?
Intellectual Quandary. I also stream on video games on Sundays. I don't know what I'm going to do this weekend. We'll see. Check it out if you're interested. If not, it's cool.
And of course, I'm the old geek, and it appears I read Dr. Seuss because that's what people seem to like.
And then his channel became the Dr. Seuss channel.
I don't know where all the views have come from on that video, but hey.
What you should start doing is do really hot take things like, why Cat in the Hat is actually secretly a blah blah blah. Like clickbaity Seuss.
Yeah.
What's the secret message in one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish?
No, I'm not going to. I'm not going to. But if you can find any more horror stories rewritten for children, yeah, I'll happily read those. Because I rather enjoyed that. That was quite good fun.
I told you it was good.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you everybody in chat. We've got Mage with a channel, and Slam with a channel, and Seraphis with a channel, and who else we got with channels? Doc Flamingo appears on other people's channels. I've seen him. Thank you for the donation, Doc, and thank you for the donation, Richard. If you're still with us, Richard has a channel. Going further up, thank you, Straw Piglet, and hopefully see you in the OSE games coming up. Thank you, Ralph. Hopefully you're joining us in games coming up. There's Grim Squirrel. Hello, Grim Squirrel.
You'll have to ask John, Straw Piglet. I don't run them. I just show up sometimes.
What's that?
Saturday
OSE
game.
Saturday.
Yeah, there's a Saturday OSE game, but I know you're on the west. He's on the west coast, so this weekend it's only an early game. So that's going to start at 6 a.m. Straw Piglet's time, unfortunately. The evening game is MERP this week.
I am looking to maybe, just as I guess a last shill possible future development, I have a lot of time on Mondays. And so I may very well be starting a game Monday day on the alternate Mondays from By the Sword. So, not any good for you folks in the UK, but because you're probably at work, right?
Well, Plan sometimes streams on Mondays, so
But if I was to do it earlier in the day, I might be able to get some of the UK folks as well as make it accessible to. Because I can't be the only guy who has a really dumb work schedule.
I don't work Mondays, but I have a regular game every Monday evening.
Yeah, but you're not. Now, Monday evening for you. Yeah, it's probably still be when I would be trying to run my game.
Yeah,
because you're 6 hours ahead of me. So
yes. Anyone else? Anyone I've not said hello to? Goodbye. There's Coco. Hello, Coco. But eating the dead while starving in winter causes Wendigos.
That is true.
Yes.
But only if you're in the northeast of the United States.
Okay. There's Brian, who's currently running an Axe game on my server alongside Omen Owl. That I think it's full at the moment, but we'll have to see how that goes. So whether any spaces open up. But that's very much a in suitable for the Americans time zone game because it's very late at night for me here. Going further up, I've got a long way up now, and yeah. So if I've not said thank you to you, I do apologise. It means you haven't said anything for a while. Anyway, I've got to go because I've got work. I've got work in the morning. So I need my beauty sleep. Thank you all. Enjoyable stream tonight, chaps. See you again
Thanks
soon.
for having us. Appreciate it.
Later, folks.
Take care, everyone.